School Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know, I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution. Trump. He fucked up this time. He done sent nuclear attack subs near Russia. The end of the world is near, especially America. Before we get into that, y'all be sure to wipe y'all feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Salute friendly. Well, this is very disturbing. It had me very upset what Trump is doing, what the small hats is forcing him to do, and he willing to kill all of us than to show the Epstein list, because this is what the small hats want. Never forget that. They want depopulation. How do you get that? Nuclear war.
It seems Donald Trump has just upped the ante between Russia and the United States here.
Absolutely.
He has openly responded to the former president of Russia, Medvedev, who has made some pretty wild statements as of late in terms of nukes, in terms of them using them if forced to. And Trump is now strong-arming and firing back, and he has posted on his Truth Social what you can see here. He's responding to these provocative statements made from Russia, and he says...
No, Trump is not responding to... They're responding to him. Trump can lie and say he's responding. They're responding to him, giving them ultimatums. And they have 50 days. They have 10 days. They're responding to him and reminded him. So all Trump can do is make things worse. All he can do is make things worse. All he can do is make them think, man, let's just get it over with. He don't give a damn about protecting America. He's putting America in extreme danger.
He has ordered in response 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that.
Salute.
He says words are very important and can often lead to an unintended consequence. I hope this will not be one of those instances. Thank you for your attention on this matter.
Okay.
That is what Trump states
Play
on his
stupid.
Truth Social. He has
play stupid game, win stupid prizes. You send nuclear submarines near Russia. Russia not gonna tell you they already sent them. They already sent them. They're already in our shores. They was in our shores last year when Joe Biden started talking crazy, and they went to Cuba. They gave port calls to Cuba and Venezuela. The U.S. don't know what the hell happened to those nuclear attack submarines. They didn't go back to Russia. I can guarantee you that. They already got the U.S. surrounded. Trump playing a dangerous game, and Putin and Medvedev was warning him. He was warning him to mind his business and stay out of their business. You sending nuclear submarines near Russia means nothing to Russia. It means nothing to Russia. All it does is put Americans' lives in extreme danger. He trying to save face. Like he gonna punk somebody on social media.
ordered nuclear subs into position somewhere. We don't know where. He hasn't let that be known, obviously. And
he should be arrested.
They're creeping.
So the general should arrest him. The general should arrest him right now. The general should arrest this man right motherfucking now for that move. Since soon as he went on social media and said, I'm sending nuclear submarines, the nukes could have started flying. Putin just being patient. As soon as he said that, they can kill you for that.
This is like an open threat to Russia of nuclear war, that if you want to run your mouth, we've got nuclear subs positioned to strike and hit at any time.
Wow.
So I would pay attention to these things, because
imagine that like they the Middle East, like Russia is Iran, and that Russia told them we're not the Iranians, boy. That's what you do to them. You tell Iranians you sending nuclear submarines. This man then told the Russians, I'm sending nuclear submarines to your borders because y'all been talking crazy. What? That's outrageous what the move that Trump done made, but we very dangerous. It could happen to us at any time. And a lot of people not even paying attention.
This isn't the Trump of the last administration. As you've seen, they will back strikes even going into Iran. And Moscow's been getting hit constantly. by Ukraine as it is, backed by the West.
They ain't been.
So
Ukraine been trying to hit Moscow. Russia has the best air defenses in the goddamn world. They've been trying. They out hit a little something every now and then. Russia has the best air defenses. I'll tell you this. It's going to be way worse for us than it will ever be for Russia. And Russia is the largest country in the motherfucking world. They got plenty of territory. They can move from one blown up location and go to a whole nother.
It raises the question, will a nuke fly, tactical nukes or anything like that? Well,
salute that.
This is a big development here. I'll update on this as I get more. Follow me on X and join me for
Pride goes before the fall. This man Pride finna get all us in trouble, man. And the news, they love this type of shit. That's why I say these devils. Let's hear how the news talking. Because they're supposed to be calling him a madman. They loving this type of shit.
Ordered the deployment of 2 U.S. nuclear submarines to the appropriate regions in response to threats from the former Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev. Both men have been taunting each other of late after the White House this week said Russia had 10 days to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine or face tough sanctions. In response, Mr. Medvedev reminded him that Russia possessed nuclear strike capabilities. It's not clear exactly where Mr. Trump has ordered the submarines to be deployed. We'll have reaction from Moscow in a moment with Steve Rosenberg. But first, Gary O'Donoghue has our top story from Washington.
In recent days, Donald Trump's rhetoric on Russia has turned up a notch.
Russia? I think it's disgusting what they're doing.
But rhetoric has now turned to action with the deployment of 2 nuclear submarines, not specifying whether they were the kind that could carry nuclear warheads. He was responding to the words of the former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who accused the US president of playing the ultimatum game over threats to impose fresh sanctions on Russia next week if a ceasefire in Ukraine wasn't agreed. The former president said, "Each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country." In a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump said he was deploying the subs just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. The 2 men have met before in 2017 at a summit in Asia. President Medvedev called Donald Trump open and well-meaning. While former President Medvedev retains a role in Russia's National Security Council, he is not seen as the voice of Vladimir Putin, but nonetheless is provocative in his statements.
That's a lie. He is the voice of Putin. He say what Putin can't say because Putin got to be the statesman. He got to be calm, cool, collected. That's the good cop, bad cop. Putin is the good cop. He's the bad cop. When he say we would nuke your ass, have Putin demoted him? Have Putin punished him for keep threatening to nuke the West and nuke NATO and mocking them? And no, why? Because Putin wants him to do that. Putin wants him to make those threats while Putin smile and use the diplomatic approach.
Today, the current Russian president, pictured here with his Belarusian counterpart, was more measured, declaring that disappointments only came from excessive expectations. The US has more than a dozen submarines that can carry nuclear warheads. They form part of the so-called triad of air, land and sea deterrence, the most undetectable part of America's strategic nuclear force.
Who y'all fuck y'all think y'all talking
Donald Trump's latest deadline on Russia runs out at the end of next week. He's already said he doesn't expect fresh sanctions.
His deadline runs out. Russia already told you to hell with your deadline. They don't give a shit. You don't have to give them no days. Don't give them minutes. They just told you that. Who you giving time to himself to come up with more foolish stuff. He's just gonna make himself look like a fool. Medvedev just told you this can be war, not with Ukraine. That's what pissed Trump off. We told him with you personally, with the US personally. They don't mind removing Ukraine from the battlefield and just having it out with the US. It's up to America. See, all that talking tough. Come on, man. Them people just seen your work in Afghanistan. They not fucking impressed. They seen your work.
Vladimir Putin's behavior.
Well, in a moment, we'll hear from Steve in Moscow. But first, back to you, Gary, in Washington. This all seems frankly extraordinary. The deployment of nuclear submarines.
It is extraordinary, Clive, and it's not clear whether these are nuclear-armed submarines or nuclear-powered submarines. It's worth saying that. And we don't know where they're being put. And yesterday, the Secretary of State, also the National Security Advisor, really downplayed these kinds of comments from President Medvedev, saying he wasn't a relevant player, he wasn't a decision maker in Russia. And today here we have the president sending off a couple of submarines in the direction because of these comments.
Scare Russia. They don't give a shit about none of that shit. They're the largest super fucking power in the goddamn world. You can't flex no muscle on Russia. Period. You couldn't even flex it on the Houthi rebels. You hurry up and sign the treaty with them. 12-day war. We just seen the 12-day war, Iran-Israel. Embarrassing. What the hell you don't flex muscles on the most powerful military in the world right now? That's Russia. How do we know that? Because it's a war called the Russia-Ukraine war. We're witnessing the power of the Russian military. And like I fucking just said, we can go back to the U.S. most recent work. It's about your body of work. You just got ran out of Afghanistan. A bunch of excuses on why it happened. Cool. But they didn't have tanks, planes. They didn't have submarines, and they kicked their ass. Now you're dealing with a peer-to-peer type of military. Come on, bro. It's not going to work. It just endangers Americans.
It's from the former President Medvedev. So it's unclear exactly how serious this is. We're always told that we should take his actions, not his words, seriously, and these are actions. And in the past few minutes, the president has said,
Trump get what the fuck you defending the Nazis for? We wanted the end to the Nazis in Ukraine. We like that work the Russians doing to those Nazis. Those are the descendants of the real Nazis. Those are the baby Nazis. On to the fucking team with the latest and greatest of American weapons. They've been getting their ass kicked. Why the fuck is Trump trying to come rescue the Nazis, though? Oh, people crazy. I will never let it on my resume that I sided with any allies of any Nazis. I denounced them from the beginning. I'm denouncing them now. Trump conned everybody talking about he was going to have peace. But he have got no peace, no motherfucker well. Now he's sending nuclear attack submarines, come on, bro, to Russia's border. I mean, get the fuck. We got borders? Why do we got to be living in fear? Why my blood pressure got to be high? Because I know what time it is. Russia not going to tap out. You will face this humiliating defeat in Ukraine, and you will taste that medicine. That's just that. That is all America. Listen, if America do not accept the defeat in Ukraine, America will be attacked. That I'm telling you that.
That a threat was made, it wasn't appropriate, and that he had to protect our people, as he put it. Well, this is a significant escalation, but we'll see really whether it amounts to more than words. And there will be this crunch point at the end of next week when this deadline runs out in terms of Ukraine, and extra sanctions could be put on Russia and its trading partners like India and China.
This is crazy, bro. I see some of y'all brothers say you're the National Guard that you should fucking know you just lost to goddamn Taliban. Y'all talking about everything but the loss to the Taliban. Russia's not on. You lost to the fucking Taliban, man. What the hell wrong with you? At least say, hey, we need to get our shit together. You lost to the Taliban. And Russia is defeating the best military in Europe right now besides Russia. That's the fucking Ukrainians and NATO. Come on, stop. Let's stop this foolishness. And learn something. You're here to learn. You're not here to teach us a goddamn thing. Oh, imagine that. All the revolutionaries in the chat understand that. We way past that. America ain't won a fucking war since our ancestors won this fucking Civil War. Stop all that fucking bullshit. It's not about winning wars. It's about endless fucking wars. They don't give a shit about winning. Winning is money. But they playing with our fucking lives right now. Hold on. My bad, y'all.
Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025.
This is serious business, y'all. So we're going to listen. This is serious business. It's not no game. Y'all who been watching the program, y'all understand it's not no game. It's very dangerous times, bro. Y'all gotta, cause y'all your loved ones don't want to listen. This grown folks streams. A lot of people don't have the intelligence, you know, and the will, determination like we do to sit here and go through this very detailed information. But it's at our doorstep now. This is not a game. And if anybody believes Russia's gonna back down from the US, I mean, what can I tell you? You're gonna find out the hard way. They're not gonna back down from the NATO, and they're not scared of NATO or the US. That we're in a very bad position right now. And we only can pray that the Most High protect us and shield us from what's gonna happen. But if we're looking at prophecy, it's the end of these people. And we gotta be prepared to rise up from the ashes. But it's gonna happen, bro. I can see it so crystal clear. I'm telling you.
Welcome to this special edition of Judging Freedom with my dear friend and colleague, Scott Ritter. Scott, thank you for the double duty this week. There's no better person on the planet for us to turn to explain the dangers, the significance, and the idiocy
And I appreciate you
behind what President Trump ordered today. What did he announce that he did today, and what did he order, and what is the significance of it?
What did the president do today? Well, what the president did today is deploy two of the most lethal strategic nuclear assets in the American arsenal, or at least he claims to deploy it. I think we will touch upon this later. Ohio-class submarine launched ballistic missile capable submarines armed with Trident nuclear or solid fuel missiles, each one tipped with multiple thermonuclear warheads. He has said that he has ordered them deployed into the appropriate areas, in response to a Russian tweet from Dmitry Medvedev. This means areas where the submarines' missiles can target Russia. This is extraordinarily dangerous. The United States maintains a permanent force of Ohio-class submarines on station, 2 submarines at least in each of the oceans, 2 in the Atlantic, 2 in the Pacific. They're on station where their missiles could reach any of the potential nuclear threats to the United States of America. On occasion, we deploy additional Ohio-class submarines. For instance, just recently,
North Korea might strike the U.S. I'm telling you, they might strike the U.S. I don't know what type of plan they got. I told you 2 days ago, North Korea released a diplomatic statement in the UN saying that the U.S. had passed the threshold of being attacked nuclearly. Say they had passed the threshold by the type of shit Trump doing. They say the U.S. is past. They are a rogue regime, and they is. They're putting everybody's life on danger. Putin being too humble. I'm glad. I'm thanking him because I don't want a lot of people to die. But this shit Trump just pulled, man, come on, bro. If Russia said, that's why they ain't gonna say it. We're sending our attack submarines to your waters right now. Come on, man. The U.S. could say that's an act of fucking war. But they doing it.
An Ohio-class submarine was deployed into the Indian Ocean close to Iran, where its Trident missiles armed with W-76-2 low-yield nuclear weapons could be used against Iran if the president so ordered. But we have 4 nuclear-armed submarines. So when he said he's ordered 2 deployed, is he talking about 2 additional submarines to this? Or is he talking about redeploying 2 submarines out of their existing stations into new deployment areas that make them even more of a threat to Russia? See, the tweet he's responding to is one from Dmitry Medvedev, in which Medvedev sort of mocked the president as
Medvedev is the former president of Russia, who's the number 2 person on their National Security Council, who in recent years has been more publicly bellicose than President Putin.
He's like the bad cop to Putin's good cop.
Right. And what did he do? Pick a social media fight with Trump, and Trump took the bait?
Mean tweets. This is literally mean tweets. This is about Donald Trump
Putin did
threatening to end the world as we know it because of a mean tweet. But
on Trump, because this is what Putin want to say to Trump, but he can't. Trump been talking a lot of shit to Putin. Putin just smile and be diplomatic. You think Putin don't want to let Trump know we will blow up America? You not too far away. We got the most nukes. We are the largest nuclear power on this planet. You think Putin don't want to say that? So he let his number two say it. Any people talking about assassinate Putin. If you assassinate Putin, Medvedev gonna be the president, and they not gonna want that. It get worse than Putin. And if you assassinate Medvedev, then the communists, they're not the communists. The communists might come in power. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be grass. They absolutely want nuclear war right now. They're begging Putin to be more tough. His people, his military is telling him it's time to take out NATO. Trump playing with fire, man.
what's even more outrageous is that Donald Trump doesn't understand what Medvedev tweeted. Medvedev was telling Trump to knock it off with the dangerous threats, saying that, if you do this, America can end up looking like the Walking Dead because of the dead hand. The dead hand is a reference to the perimeter system, which is a defensive system put in place by the Soviet Union back in the 1980s, so that if they are ever struck preemptively by the United States, a first strike, by the way, the tactic to be used in a first strike is to bring Ohio-class submarines close to Russia's shores, fire off their Trident missiles on a flattened trajectory to avoid detection so you can strike the targets quicker, which is what Trump just actually appeared to order the U.S. Navy to do. So the dead hand now becomes a factor, because if Trump is dumb enough to launch an attack against Russia, the dead hand, the perimeter system, will ensure that all of Russia's strategic nuclear forces will be fired against the United States, even if Trump takes out Putin, the National Command Authority, etc. I know this is a fact. When I was a weapons inspector in Votkinsk, there was a missile crisis in March of 1990 because the Russians were trying to get three missiles out of the factory without us turning on the.
Russia got it set up. If you try to pull on them what you pulled in Iran, you dead. You dead. You can succeed in your mission of killing their leadership, and you're going to die. That's what Medvedev was telling Trump. Quit talking tough and giving us ultimatums and what we're going to do, what we're not going to do, threatening us, because we're not going to listen to you. And if you ever try to take us out, we're going to destroy your country with the dead hand switch. Automatically, 6,000 nukes on the way to you. Kiss your ass goodbye.
On the cargo scan X-ray system. Why? These weren't three SS-25 missiles. They don't care if we see those. These were three of what they call Sirena. These were modified SS-25s, not to carry nuclear warheads, but to carry the radio equipment that's used to broadcast the codes. They needed to get these missiles out and deployed and ready so that the perimeter system was alive and well and living. The dead hand is only defensive in nature. Trump should feel no threat from this unless he's planning on attacking Russia. This is the insanity. This president doesn't even know what he's doing. And he's responding to a mean tweet from a guy who's been me tweeting for years now. I mean, I think most people, view Dmitry Medvedev's tweets with sort of, humor. Yeah, they hurt sometimes. He's very good at what he does. But he's not the president of Russia. He doesn't command Russia's military nuclear forces. He doesn't direct the Russian economy. He advises Vladimir Putin, but he is not Vladimir Putin. So to treat Medvedev as if his tweets actually will translate.
For over 20 years, maybe 25 years, that's been Putin's trusted number two guy. He trusts him more than anything. Like I said, if Putin didn't want this dude saying this stuff, you think he'd be saying it? Putin would have been told, now stop that. Man, Putin is telling him, go ahead. He telling him, go all out. Because I wish I could say it, but I got to be political. But he's not stopping him. And every word he's saying, Putin is stamping that. Putin is saying that. If Trump make the wrong move, they're going to nuke America, bro.
Into action is, childish behavior, but in this case, dangerously childish, because he's literally putting 2 U.S. nuclear submarines on a combat patrol against Russia.
Let's read exactly what Trump said. Chris has prepared a full screen. This is from his social, his Truth Social. Based on the highly provocative statements of the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who is now the deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. Thank you for your attention to this matter, exclamation point. Would Hegseth understand what you just explained about the power of these and how the Russians would perceive the threat? Would Pete Hegseth know that we already have 4 underwater and are we adding 2 more? Do we have 2 more to add, or has he just repositioned 2 of the 4 that are already somewhere in the seas?
I think we have 14 Ohio-class submarines. I mean, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 14. And they go through a rotation. You know, first of all, those 4 submarines that are out there, it's a minimum of 4, 2 in each ocean. You know, they go through rotations. And so they'll rotate back to their home port for refitting. The crews have to go out. There are some that are cycling through long-term refueling and refurbishment. So you don't have 14 able to be deployed at any one time. I think you probably have somewhere in the area of, not 6 to 9 Ohio-class submarines available for deployment. You'll have the 4 out in the fleet, out in the field. You'll have 2 that are getting ready to come out and replace 2 of the 4. And then you have surge capacity. Like I said, sometimes they send an additional submarine out to the Indian Ocean. Other times they may choose to put 3 submarines in each of the deployment areas, depending on what the world situation is. But this is a standard operating procedure, something that Pete Hegseth should be cognizant of now that he's the Secretary of Defense. He should have been briefed on this by the Commanding General of Strategic Command, whose job it is to run these submarines. The other thing that we never announced the movement of Ohio-class submarines.
I was just going to ask you, what is to be gained by making an announcement like this? Is he just trying to cause Putin sleepless nights?
Well, I don't think Putin's going to cause sleep. But to make this announcement, first of all, it's foolish because all you're doing is giving credence to the legitimacy of the dead hand. I mean, the dead hand, again, only exists and only becomes viable if the United States launches a preemptive nuclear strike against Russia. And redeploying Ohio-class submarines close to Russia's shores indicates that that's what you're doing. So, the Russians are going to be doing something in return. This is where it gets stupid because now they have to do something in return. Hopefully they don't announce it and make a big deal of it, but they do it in a way that we detect it and we know what they've done. But the other thing is, let's say American. I'm a Ohio.
You wishing. That's the American in him. They absolutely have their nuclear attack submarines in our waters. They absolutely do. And Trump has proven why they should keep him there because he's lost his mind. He's lost his mind, man. And I absolutely believe the small hats is forcing his hand. And that's crazy. He's so embarrassed of those. And this got everything to do with those files. He's so embarrassed. That's what the best thing for Putin to do himself. I know Putin got the files. Is he need to release that shit on the Americans his goddamn self.
Class submarine commander, a captain. And I'm out there just minding my own business. And all of a sudden, I'm told that the president is redirecting my submarine to a new deployment area, maybe even telling me to target my warheads. I mean, we don't know. All the warheads should have been detargeted a long time ago because we don't want inadvertent launch. But what did the president now say? Not only are we redeploying them, but you're now going to have a Russian city targeted to each one of these warheads. Who knows what's going through this man's head? But the president did this publicly. So now I'm the Russians. And I go, okay, guys, start looking for an Ohio-class submarine moving. Because when an Ohio-class submarine's on station, it's sitting at the bottom of the damn ocean and it ain't moving. It's avoiding detection altogether. You don't want to be moving this submarine because it can become detected. Now, if I'm the Russians, I'm looking for this thing. The Russians have some very good submarines. And if they locate it and trail it, now they'll follow it to its new deployment area. And if it makes a threatening move, the Russians will sink it immediately. I mean, this is how dangerous this is.
he has put the lives of 19-year-old sailors at risk, as well as everybody on these subs.
Oh yeah, there's not too many 19-year-olds on that submarine because nuclear submarines require people with that have to go through some good training. But you got some 20, 21-year-olds. You got a lot of 30-year-olds. You got a lot of 40-year-old men with families and kids. This is insanity. These are America's, most capable warriors who we never want to think. We don't ever want these guys to go into combat. They're there for nuclear deterrence. They're there to deter an enemy from carrying out an attack against the United States. Now the president has put them in a place where they're not doing deterrence, but they have now become the perceived aggressors. This is insanity in the extreme. Pete Hegseth should be advised. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs should be screaming his head off. I mean, every J.D. Vance should be saying, Mr. President, no. But what we get, Lindsey Graham, the perfume princess out there having an orgasmic response to the president's toughness, telling his friends, the Russian people. Lindsey Graham isn't friends with anybody in Russia. I can tell you nobody in Russia is friends with Lindsey Graham. But, this is ridiculous. I apologize for the sexual reference there. That was inappropriate. But, you just take a look at the way this man's responding to this dangerous absurdity on the part of the president. It's idiotic.
This is going to raise your blood pressure even more. Rather than cautioning the president, my former Fox News colleague, who now runs the Pentagon, has reposted on his own X account President Trump's nuclear post that I just read to you. There it is. On Pete Hegseth's official account, he reposted what Donald Trump said. So these guys are enablers, Scott. But I got to ask you something that I think is going to make this worse. Is it true that within the past several weeks, the United States delivered nuclear armaments to Great Britain? And if so, what did we send there?
Well, it appears to be true. I mean, I can't confirm it, meaning I haven't seen the deployment order and I haven't seen the miss, but I've read the media reports and all indications are that we have delivered B-6112 gravity bombs. These are basically it's the same weapon system that we have deployed throughout NATO, part of the NATO nuclear deterrence. We've now deployed these to Great Britain, to air bases there, which means that we now have a nuclear deterrence outside of the NATO hierarchy. That's what's interesting here, because in order for Great Britain to receive American nuclear weapons under the NATO umbrella, you have to invoke the NATO Nuclear Advisory Council and all this. There has to be discussion and things of this nature. This is a unilateral deployment of the United States to Great Britain, which implies that this is about the United States and Great Britain posturing as opposed to the United States strengthening NATO's nuclear deterrence. This is at a time when Great Britain just did the Northwoods Declaration with France, where they've combined the nuclear doctrines of France and Great Britain as an independent outside of NATO nuclear capability. This is when Great Britain has extended its nuclear umbrella into Poland, and now the United States is attaching its nuclear force to the British. I mean, we are literally, people look at all this stuff and they're like, oh, that's not a big deal. Let's not blow this out of proportion. If you go back and read Barbara Tuchman's fantastic book, The Guns of August, it's about the lead up to August 1914, the beginning of World War I, especially in the month of July. All the things that were happening, the people went, yeah, but it's just mobilization. Yeah, we're just doing this. No, there'll never be a war. Nobody wants a war. And then boom, World War I. Right now, moves are being made right now that if they're not stopped and reversed, are going to lead to a general nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia. This is the direction we're heading. And I want to remind your audience that the CIA said last year there's a greater than 50% chance that there will be a nuclear war between the United States and Russia during the last months of the Biden administration. What the Biden administration was doing, as provocative as it was, pales in comparison to what this administration is doing. We're above 50% right now, Judge. We're heading into extraordinarily dangerous territory.
What do you think is going on in the Kremlin as we speak as a result of all of this?
Dismay. I mean, first of all, the Kremlin right now, I believe, is, trying to bring an end to the Ukraine conflict without creating an even greater conflict. And so this is always a delicate diplomatic balancing game. And then you have this president making threats. I mean, we still have the August 8th deadline coming up. The 10 days expires. What's going to happen on August 8th? Steve Witkoff flying to Moscow to meet with his Russian counterparts. Are threats going to be issued? And now in that environment where we're supposed to be actually trying to calm each other down, the president deploys 2 nuclear submarines, in response to a mean tweet from Dmitry Medvedev. The good news here, and I know I'm going to get in trouble here from people, but thank God there's one mature, responsible adult in the room, and that's Vladimir Putin. Is he perfect? No. Does he walk on water? No. But I'll tell you what, he doesn't do any of the garbage that Trump's doing. And I believe Putin will do that which is necessary to ensure Russia's security interests without being provocative. If you saw his discussion today about Ukraine, very level-headed, saying the door's open for peace. Don't blame us. It's Ukraine saying they don't want peace. It's the United States that's doing we're ready for it, but there are realistic conditions that have to be met. Trying to just calm things down, lower the temperature. And I think he's going to continue this way. This man is not suicidal. He didn't spend a quarter of a century getting Russia out of the ashes to where Russia is today, this nation where Russians are actually proud of who they are and what they've become. He didn't do all this just to throw it away in a blinding flash of nuclear insanity. And I think that was what was behind Dmitry Medvedev's mean tweet. What he was telling the president of the United States is, calm down, take a chill pill, because the things you're talking about, the way you're talking, can only end with a nuclear apocalypse. And if you think for a moment that you can preemptively strike our leadership because we're not playing the game in Ukraine the way you want to play, we have the dead hand, and the dead hand will take you out. That's not provocative. That's just a statement of fact. And hey, Tulsi, if you're watching, talk to the guy. Brief him on the perimeter system. Brief him on the dead hand. And if you need help, call me. I'll come in and back you up. But this guy needs to have some hard facts put on the table in front of him.
I don't think he listens to anybody. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard is the only.
Revolutionary salute to our brother Randy Thomas for the donation to the war chest. Revolutionaries win life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute to you.
The one that will tell him what he doesn't want to hear, but the others are all yes men around him. However,
Pete Hegseth retweeted. That's the biggest indication of sycophancy that you can come up with.
Correct. President Putin did release a statement, very brief, to the point, and manifesting what you said, the adult in the room. All disappointments arise from excessive expectations. In order to have a peaceful resolution, it is necessary to have substantive conversations and not in public. He gets it. He gets it that Donald Trump is just bravado on steroids.
Yeah, and the other thing is public posturing like this boxes you into a corner. I mean, what is the masculine statement that he's trying to make by deploying these nuclear submarines? Because this is alpha dog territory here. So now that you've done it, do you back away? Do you back off? Do you pretend you didn't do it? Do you admit you were wrong? No. Once you've gone alpha dog mode, you're sitting there with your chest pumped out. Hey, I got it. I'll take. So and then what? Is there going to be an additional escalation on this part? President Putin is 100% correct. The place for these discussions is behind the scenes. So you don't box yourself into a corner. Right. So there's room to maneuver. It's diplomacy 101. And, even a simple Marine like me knows this, that sometimes it's best not to go public with things, and you handle it behind closed doors. And then when you finally reach agreement, as difficult as that process might be, you come out and put on a common smiley face, shake hands, and everything's good. The world doesn't need to know what your disagreements are. They only need to know that you actually, worked through them and came to, to an eventual agreement that makes the world a safer place to be. I'll leave you, not leave you, but I'll say this. On July 29th, President Trump, in responding to a question from a task correspondent, talking about the New START Treaty, which is the last strategic nuclear arms agreement in play between the United States and Russia, said that's an agreement that cannot be allowed to expire. It expires on 4 February 2026. That's the most sane thing this man has said. So hopefully there's a modicum of sanity in that brain of his so that he understands the danger of nuclear weapons. He appears to understand that. The necessity of avoiding an arms race, he appears to understand that. And hopefully we can get through these turbulent times and get on to doing what needs to be done, like extending the New START Treaty.
The Russian people are referring to Trump by a certain word. What is that word?
Oh dear. It's a word I'm not supposed to use. It's not a foul word, but it's not a nice word. Durac means fool. It means idiot. It's not meant in a kind way. And if you call someone a durac, it is a debasing term. It means you're literally an idiot. You're stupid. You're dumber than belief. I used the word today in describing President Trump, and I used the Russian variant because I just happen to believe that the 150 plus million Russians who looked at this, that's probably the first word that came to their mind. Durac. What an idiot. What a fool. Because there's no justification for his actions. There's no legitimate trigger for this. It's as foolish and idiotic as it gets.
What is American intel doing now in response to what Trump announced?
Well, I mean, what it should be doing right now is monitoring Russian strategic nuclear forces, looking for any alteration in alert status. Counting Russian submarines. The Russians just deployed a brand new submarine, the biggest submarine in the world. It carries 96 nuclear warheads on it. I can't remember how many, the RS-56 Bulava missiles, but the more modern than the Trident missile. 96 of them. It's out there right now on station. American intelligence is trying to find out where that submarine is, trying to look at the operational status of the mobile missiles, the SS-27s that are out there. Are they in garrison? Have they been put out into the Siberian forests? What's the alert status of the other missiles in their silos? Because what Trump did is unfortunately, he began the process of the mobilization of nuclear forces that, if left unchecked, will lead to an inevitable nuclear. I want to come to the point. Last fall, we were over 50% chance of a nuclear war. We were very lucky to avoid it. Right now, that percentage is higher. It's an extraordinarily dangerous situation that, even though I sort of chuckle when I talk about the word durac, it's only because the situation's so damn dangerous that you have to laugh. It's like, we're going to die. What can you do? Cry or laugh? And we're going to die unless something changes. This is it. There won't be historians able to write this history because they'll all be dead. But if they were, this will be one of those moments that a person like Barbara Tuchman would be talking about in the future, Guns of August book that would have been written if anybody lived. But we're talking about thermonuclear war here, global thermonuclear war. There won't be survivors.
Wow. How destructive can these submarines be if they were to attack under the radar or under the defensive systems at Moscow? Are we talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki type destruction or greater?
Oh, good Lord, greater. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were 12 kilotons, under 20 kilotons of destructive power. Destructive, no doubt about it. Our cities would be hit with 150 kilotons, 300 kilotons, 1 megaton. That's 1,000. We're literally talking. So I did a public briefing last December at the National Press Center where I invited Theodore Postal to come in and give a presentation about what a single Russian nuclear warhead over Washington.
This is the brilliant and fearless MIT physicist.
Yeah, a good man. And you look at this briefing and it terrifies you. And that's just one. Understand that when you do nuclear targeting, you're putting at least 2 warheads on each target just to ensure. If you're hitting a national capital center, I can say this: during the Cold War, Moscow was targeted by about 60 warheads, just overkill to make sure we got everything. And so what the Russians will be doing the same thing. There will be nothing left alive in Washington, D.C. Read Annie Jacobson's book, Nuclear War. She run through a very realistic scenario, and it's over. And you don't want to survive this. If there's a nuclear war, you want to die. You want to be one of the ones who turns into dust immediately, because to live isn't to live. To live is to die. Rear Admiral Buchanan, who is the director of plans for Strategic Command, gave a lecture last November in Washington, D.C. And after he acknowledged that the Biden administration is ready to have a nuclear exchange with Russia, we're ready to have a nuclear war with Russia, and we're going to win. This is what he said. He then said, we probably should be more honest with the American public about what this means and what victory means. Because he said, even when we win, life will never be the same for any American. There won't be civil liberties. We'll be living under permanent martial law. You're not going to have electricity, running water, medicine. None of the niceties of civilization that you currently enjoy will exist. And that's winning a nuclear war. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to win a nuclear war. You just want to die, because to win means you're going to be suffering. And if you're a parent with kids, who the hell wants that for their children? This is why people have to become angry about this and mobilized about this. People should be calling up their representatives in Congress and saying, what the hell are you doing? People should be demanding that Lindsey Graham, the perfume princess, get booted out of the Senate. This is the man who is almost singularly responsible for this very crisis because of his asinine performances, because of his Russophobia. This is why I do what I do, to combat Russophobia, so that people, when they hear the lunacy out of people like Lindsey Graham, out of Donald Trump and others, they go, no, that's not real. That's not the Russia. We're not buying into this crap. But it's an uphill battle right now. But people need to understand, we're talking about, you're going to die. Your kids are going to die. And if they don't die, they're going to suffer like you've never seen people suffer before. No parent wants to see that or experience that. So let's nip this thing in the bud. Let's let Donald Trump, let's let Pete Hegseth, let's let Lindsey Graham and everybody else know that this is not okay. This is not good. You don't deploy 2 Ohio-class nuclear submarines because of a mean tweet. Get real. Become an adult. Become the leader that everybody expected you to be. A mean tweet sent 2 of the most powerful assets of the United States into an operational status. This is insanity, literal insanity.
Scotty, I know you have to go, so I will let you go. Thank you very much for all this. You warned about all this in your book, Highway to Hell. I just want the public.
I mean, that's why I write a book, Judge.
You did. I read the book. I was privileged to write a blurb for it. It's all in there. It predicted what's happening right now. Scotty, I know you got to go. Thank you very much. President Trump announced the deployment of 2 nuclear submarines, quote, to an appropriate location, close quote, in response for some, what I think was ridiculous and childish social media spat that he had with former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. What is your take on the propriety or impropriety of such an announcement by the president?
He's pushing us closer to nuclear war. You know, it'd be one thing if it was just this. In isolation, you could say, yeah, Trump just, he didn't get his nap today, and, he's a little groggy from, because of that. But within the last week and a half or 2 weeks, the United States redeployed to England nuclear bombs that had been withdrawn previously as a sign to the then Russians that, okay, yeah, we're serious about de-escalating. So now that we've deployed those, and on the back heels of that, you had this General Donahue, who is the commander of US EUCOM, the European Command, talk about invading, capturing Kaliningrad very, very quickly. So in fact, And you yourself, you were on Dmitry Sign's show, I think, yesterday or the day before. And the generals were expressing genuine concern, like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
What is Trump trying to? Are they serious? If Ray or I were back at our old jobs, and the Russians were doing stuff like this, we'd have to say, Mr. President, you've got to be prepared that the Russians may be preparing to attack.
I'm going to play the clip of General Donahue, and then Ray, I'm going to ask you to tell us what is Kaliningrad and what is this guy talking about. But this is the commander of more troops than any other four-star in the military. Colonel McGregor has some choice words for this guy and his background. We don't need to get into that now, but he's addressing a group of European and American military leaders, and he threatens to put American boots on the ground. My question to you after you see this is, A, what is Kaliningrad and where is it? And B, Ray, could he possibly have made a statement of this magnitude without the knowledge and consent of Secretary Hegseth and President Trump? Chris, cut number 10.
If you look at Kaliningrad, at its, you can argue back and forth, but it's about 47 miles wide, surrounded by NATO on all sides. There's absolutely no reason why that A2A bubble, to deter Russia, we cannot take that down from the ground in a time frame that is unheard of and faster than we've ever been able to do. We've already planned that. We've already developed it.
Ground, Ray, already planned, already developed. So first of all, what is this place and where is it?
It's up there near the Baltic states and Poland. It's what they call an exclave. In other words, there's no ground connection with Russia proper. An exclave, they call it. And so it's really hard to defend if anyone tried to take that seriously, what Donahue is saying.
Is it Russia?
Yeah, it's part of Russia proper. It's a leftover from World War II. And, there are agreements that allow Russia to supply it, and it's never been a problem. And so here's an artificial stoking up of a place where Russia is particularly vulnerable. And now we have the president saying he's going to send 2 nuclear equipped or nuclear capable aircraft carriers into the area. As Larry said, if I were advising President Putin, I would say, look, you have to go to DEFCON, whatever it is. You have to increase the level of your alert system, because God knows what this guy's going to do. And that's the nub of it. Trump is the fly in the ointment. He's totally unpredictable. He's under great pressure from the Epstein stuff. And he's being fought back against by the deep state and the media and the Democrats, of course, for this revelations of how they tried to sabotage his election and then his administration the first time around. So there's a lot of reason why he should be upset, but deranged is something that the Russians don't really like. I imagine they're on tenterhooks. I imagine Putin is calling Trump and saying, look, this is serious stuff. Let's talk.
Larry, the week began with President Trump at his golf club, or one of them, in Scotland, seated next to UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, threatening President Putin. If the war isn't over, it used to be 50 days. Now I'm only giving you 10 to 12. By midweek, he had reduced it to 5. So he's basically saying if the war is not over, or a ceasefire isn't entered by tomorrow, Saturday, August 2nd, he, Donald Trump, will force Putin's hand by imposing secondary sanctions on anybody that buys Russian oil. Can Donald Trump successfully intimidate Vladimir Putin? Will this threat change the Russian military strategy in Ukraine one iota, Larry?
No, I think the Russians are starting to view Trump like an annoying horsefly at a picnic, something you just have to sort of swat away and try to ignore. the threat of sanctions against Russia have, there's zero effect.
You and I have seen that personally.
Yeah, it's just Trump has no leverage there. China and India, while there are some reports that the Indian refineries have stopped processing Russian fuel, I guarantee you what's going to go on. This stuff's going to go into what we would call a black market. It's not going to be easily recorded or easily identified. So all that Donald Trump is doing is seeing how much he can alienate even countries in the world which we previously thought were our friends and our allies. It's the most erratic, reckless behavior I've seen in any president, including Joe Biden. And I really think that Trump is suffering from some serious mental decline. That is, he's able to mask it up to a point. But I liken it to, I'm sure we've all had an elderly relative who, when they got into like their last years, they would start blurting out, expletives and say things in a very crude and rude way that they never would have when they were in sort of their normal state of mind. And I think that's what we're seeing with Donald Trump.
Before I jump to Ray on a similar topic, Senator Graham, of all people, threatening President Putin. You got to see this. Larry, what is your take on General Donahue? In accordance with military protocol, could he have made a statement of that magnitude without the knowledge and consent of the Secretary of Defense or even the President?
No. He spent too much time at altitude without enough oxygen. That's the only other explanation I could give.
Here's
the other thing, Judge, is that if Hegseth and the president wanted to explain that Donahue didn't really mean what he wanted, they could have. So the Russians have to accept that as the plan, so to speak, crazy as it is. I mean, Trump is non-compass mentis with craziness attached, which is doubly dangerous than Joe Biden, for God's sake. And I never thought I'd hear myself say that.
Chris, gentlemen, watch this. Did you know that Donald Trump is going to whoop Vladimir Putin's ass? Oh, not my words. A quote from the senior senator from South Carolina. Chris, cut number one.
Putin, your turn is coming. Donald Trump is the Scotty Scheffler of American politics and foreign diplomacy, and he's about to put a whooping on your ass. What's going to happen here is that Trump is going to impose tariffs on people that buy Russian oil. China, India, and Brazil, those three countries buy about 80% of cheap Russian oil. That's what keeps Putin's war machine going. So President Trump's going to put 100% tariff on all those countries, punishing them for helping Putin. Putin can live through sanctions. He could give a damn about Russian soldiers. But China, India, and Brazil, they're about to face a choice between the American economy or helping Putin. And I think they're going to come pick the American economy.
Fool.
This may be the crudest, but I don't know which is the most reckless. Trump's threat of Putin, General Donahue's threat to land troops, or this craziness from Senator Graham.
Yeah, well, this is reminiscent of the character that George C. Scott played in the movie Dr. Strangelove.
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely. At least I think George C. Scott won an Oscar for that. Yeah. So maybe Lindsay should be up for it. Look, I read an article earlier this week and it had two fascinating charts. It showed that in the year 2000, the country that was the majority trading partner with most of the world was the United States. Today, as of 2024, the country which is the majority trading partner of the 75% of the world, is China. Completely role reversal. Donald Trump is acting like we're back in 2000, when the United States did have some dramatic leverage with other countries. But what's taking place now, like with these tariffs he put on China, we used to be a major exporter of pork and soybeans to China. In just the spate of 3 months, cut off And China's buying from Russia and Brazil. Because you know what? We don't have a monopoly on pigs. We may have a monopoly on pig-headed politicians, but not a monopoly on pigs.
You're on a roll, Larry. God bless you. Ray, a group of Republican senators has offered legislation to authorize the Pentagon, subject to the president's discretion, to distribute another $54 billion with a B dollars in military equipment to Ukraine. I guess the Joe Biden days are back.
Well, 54 billion. Wow, that's about a quarter of what we've already given them. That's a lot.
Correct.
You know, last time this happened, it was 2 years ago, and I watched that Senate session where they were talking about giving, I think, was over 150 billion or 50 billion more to Ukraine, and every one of those senators said, "Now look, remember that money is staying here. I mean, in our districts, it's going to be spent on our weaponry. So please understand, this is not giving money to Iran or to Ukraine." Now, you know, that was so cynical. There was only one senator, Chris Von Holland from Maryland, that didn't say specifically that. So the game is up. You know, the game is very, very transparent. The military-industrial complex is profiteering on all this stuff. Even the Europeans are now supposed to buy our weapons at our prices and give them to Ukraine. Give me a break. I don't know if Congress will approve another 54 billion. Do you, Larry?
No. I don't see them. You know, there are only a few that are getting paid off by Ukraine.
How much longer can Ukraine last, Larry, whether this 54 billion passes and Trump signs it or not?
Well, actually, I think that's one of the reasons you've seen the change in Trump's tone on this. That previously he was being assured, oh, yeah, you know, this isn't going to end anytime soon. But now, in light of the significant military advances that Russia is making in Donetsk, they just finally captured the city of Chasiv Yar, and then there's this other city called Pokrovsk. The relevance of those is they're not the same size, but let's think of them as Washington and New York City in terms of a defensive line. It's a critical place, and when you capture those, all of a sudden the Ukrainians are in a desperation mode. Top that off with the fact that almost every single night over the last 2 weeks, Russia is hitting Ukraine with more than 500 drones and dozens of Iskander or Kinzhal missiles, hypersonic missiles. Ukraine doesn't have an answer for it. It used to be, if you go back a year or 2 years ago, Russia might do this like once every 2 or 3 weeks. Now they're doing it every night. They've now got the production capability. So Ukraine's ability to survive militarily, I think they genuinely could be over before the end of the year.
Right, Larry, I'm having a flashback here. I think it was less than 3 years ago that the director of national intelligence said to the world that Russia was running out of ammunition and weaponry and didn't have any indigenous capability to replace their great losses on the battlefield. Do you mean to tell me that Joe Biden was being misinformed? And do you mean to tell me that Trump is true when he talks about hundreds of thousands, millions of Russian casualties? I mean, where's Trump getting his information from?
Well, actually, we now know, thanks to Cy Hirsch. So Cy wrote an article where he quoted this intelligence official telling him that the Russians had 2 million casualties.
Right.
And so I reached out to Cy. I said, Cy, you're being fed what my brother Ray McGovern calls male bovine excrement. And Cy was, no. These are reliable sources. I said, I'm not saying he's not a reliable source. I'm just telling you he's lying to you. So I did produce an article which spelled out exactly how many soldiers the Russians recruited and signed up under contract in 2022, the same for 2023, same for 2024, same for the first 6 months of 2025, and can show you without a doubt that the Russians have deployed to the field a grand total of 2,500,000 soldiers roughly in this last 3.5 years. If they had 2 million casualties, they wouldn't have the 700,000 soldiers they have in the field now.
Right.
It just doesn't. So they're lying, flat out lying.
Even the CIA stenographers, aka journalists and editors at the Washington Post, said 1 million Russian casualties. It can't be anywhere near that. I can't imagine that the Russians have lost 100,000 killed, Larry.
No, they probably had about 120,000 killed.
Okay.
That's from a group called Media Zona. What they've done is they've tracked the obituaries that show up in the Russian press. And if we take, the conventional combat, it usually says there's a 1-to-4 ratio, 1 killed, 3 to 4 wounded. So if you take that, that means Russia could have suffered a total of 600,000 casualties. I think that's possible. But the difference is they're signing up enough people every month that their military is growing in size, in contrast to Ukraine, which is shrinking. And then Russia's got every advantage with armor, armored vehicles, artillery shells, fixed-wing aircraft, rotary wing aircraft, fab bombs, missiles, drones. There's not a single area in which Ukraine has a military advantage.
I want you to watch, you may have seen this elsewhere, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar on Tucker Carlson earlier this week. Chris, cut number 11.
You've spent your life in combat zones. That's why I think your testimony is so compelling, because you have a frame of reference. You've seen a lot of destruction and a lot of killing in your life for 25 years. How would you compare what you saw in Gaza to what you've seen in, say, Afghanistan or Iraq?
Nothing compares. Nothing I have seen in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Baghdad, in Mosul, Sadr City, all throughout Afghanistan, Syria, the southern Philippines, some places where there's dense populations. I have never witnessed anything as brutal, destructive, violent, and I would say that steps far over our international laws of how we persecute wars and how we engage in warfare. We've long departed from that standard, and America's a part of it.
Govern, is the world starting to coalesce around the idea of what we have been saying for the past 3 years? Yeah, there is genocide there. And yes, the Israelis are using starvation as a weapon. And yes, that is absolutely unacceptable.
Yes, but it bothers me no end that no one figures out what the hell to do about it. That's the problem. The old Noah principle: no more awards for predicting rain, awards only for building arcs. None of us have figured out a way to build arcs so we can stop this damn thing. I never thought my country would be aiding, abetting, arming, and supporting genocide and enforced starvation. My God, can't we get can't we get together and figure out some way to stop it? I'm at a loss for words.
Larry, watch this. This is somebody that the three of us probably would not quote very much, Senator Dick Durbin. This is a rather emotional and profound statement he made on the floor of the Senate 2 days ago. Chris, number 12.
Several weeks ago, several senators joined me in meeting with the ambassador from Israel. And we asked him why Israel was not providing humanitarian aid in Gaza. He said, that's not true. We were providing it, but Hamas was stealing it from us and using it to buy weapons and to make them stronger. And then he went on to say, when we asked him about the children starving, the images we had all seen on television, he said, that is not true. That is a United Nations narrative. And then we asked him basically, if there's such a difference of opinion between what is happening in Gaza, why don't you allow international journalists to come into this area and report to the world what they actually see? And he said it was too dangerous for journalists to even witness it. Mr. President, I want to tell you that was an incredible statement, and I believe totally wrong. At the outset, Cindy McCain and others have told us there is no diversion by Hamas of the humanitarian aid. It just isn't coming into Gaza. And went on to say that these children, of course, we see them on television. You can't avoid it. That's the reality of the situation. And furthermore, when it came down to it, that we had to stand up and acknowledge the obvious, that Israel is part of this. Children of Gaza are starving and dying. The question is, what will the United States do about it? I thank the senator from Vermont for offering these resolutions this evening. It's painful for many of us who've devoted our congressional careers to supporting Israel and standing by them through difficult times. It is impossible to really explain or defend what is going on today. Gaza is starving and dying because of the policies of Bibi Netanyahu.
Larry, that he had referred to this ambassador, who obviously was lying, the way Bernie Sanders referred to Netanyahu as, quote, a disgusting liar. Of course, the two of them are very late to this game, as Ray just pointed out. Larry, your thoughts on all this?
Well, first, I share Ray's both anguish, anger, and frustration over this whole thing. I think the good news, though, we're starting to see this week in particular, and starting last week, the worm is starting to turn. AIPAC is losing some of its clout and influence, and we've seen it in a variety of ways. One, more of the European states are now standing up saying, okay, we're going to recognize Palestine come September when the UN General Assembly has its annual meeting. So, with England, with France, with Canada now saying it. And what does Trump do? Trump starts threatening those countries with tariffs in order to protect Israel. But also important is these shows like yours, but Tucker Carlson has really been hitting it out of the park this week, because he had John Mearsheimer on a Wednesday for an hour, and John just raked Israel up one side and down the other. He told the story of the Zionist conquest, if you will, and how wrong it is. Then Tucker followed that up with Colonel Aguilar. And Colonel Aguilar, tell you what, I used to not have too high an opinion of West Point, but man, after listening to him and his recitation of the Geneva Convention and his description of what commanders need to be doing with respect to their troops to keep them from murdering children, and then his own encounter with this small boy who was subsequently murdered by the Israelis, those messages are having power. And then Tucker's doing it again today with Candace Owens. They're hitting this subject, and Candace is hitting it as well. The reason I point those two out, they have a strong resonance in Trump's MAGA base. So right. Trump is starting to lose that base. I know he's lost several that I know.
Well, he's lost a lot of the base over the Epstein saga, but he's losing the base of those who are repulsed by the slaughter of innocents.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just add, that Trump is in a very dangerous state of mind here. He's got Epstein. I believe he's being blackmailed by Netanyahu on Epstein. I believe, like Max Blumenthal, that Epstein was working with Mossad and they have stuff on Trump. And to think that Trump would be doing genocide largely because he wants to escape blame for this kind of thing is just atrocity squared, in my view. So let me just add that I think that rather than Ukraine, it's the Middle East that really is the boiling pot here. Netanyahu is going to probably resort to something that he'll want U.S. support for. It will be an attack on Iran. And, Iran's not going to take it easily. Iran's going to destroy large parts of Israel. And then Netanyahu is going to be faced with the choice of using his nuclear weapons or forgetting about it. And, a fellow who can approve genocide and all this other stuff, forced starvation, you can't convince me that he will not use nuclear weapons in extremis. That's the real live wire. And Trump, my God, I don't know what he'd do. Last time he let himself be mousetrapped. Would he do that again? Well, We'll have to see. But Iran, Middle East, that's the key in my view.
We'll end with that. As terrifying as it is, Brother Ritter is coming up in a couple of minutes. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll look.
Apparently moments ago that Trump has ordered nuclear submarines moved closer to Russia. And Trump says, let's see if I can read that. He says, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. And he's responding to, or he's referring to some, he claims are some inflammatory comments by former Russian President Medvedev. Now, this has been going on for a while between Trump and Medvedev, where Trump said something, Medvedev commented back. Then Medvedev made another comment back. And of course, Trump doesn't like anyone calling him out. Now, it's one thing if it's going back and forth on a social media platform. It's another thing when it turns into action on the ground and nuclear submarines move into action. First of all, just what do you think of this reaction by the President Trump to an unkind and unflattering social media post?
I think it's curious. I mean, like you, it's the first time that I've seen it, Danny. But what were you going to do with those nuclear submarines? Nuclear submarines have 2 or 3 capabilities. So you've got SSBNs, which are the ballistic missile submarines. Now, clearly, well, I hope that Trump isn't planning on using ballistic nuclear weapons, because that's the end for all of us. You know, the Russians will respond to, their doctrine is to respond to any nuclear attack, and frankly, that'll be end for probably the world. That then leaves you the next set, which are conventional nuclear submarines, which are armed with torpedoes, but also medium-range missiles. So these are Tomahawk, for example, and those sorts of things. So you could actually say, okay, well, we'll actually put an SSGN as how we used to describe them, but they're pretty much the same things now. And that they're able to fire a batch of Tomahawk missiles. Again, though, that's a very, very tricky thing to do, because as soon as you fire missiles, and Tomahawk can be nuclear tipped, as soon as you fire a missile which could be nuclear tipped into Russia, their doctrine is to respond with nuclear weapons. So, you know, it's a massive, if you're going to take the risk of doing that, you know, it's a unconscionable risk in my mind to do that. I mean, the last thing you could say, well, we'll use nuclear submarines to just sort of blockade Russia, or sort of put pressure on their merchant fleet or surface fleets. But the Russians have got submarines as well, and furthermore, the Russians have got submarines which include nuclear torpedoes. So you could fire a nuclear torpedo from some distance off continental USA, and the next thing you know, you've got a nuclear torpedo going off in an American port if you decide to move that way. So, you know, to me, this is for somebody who is not short on inflammatory comments, to actually suggest that because somebody else has responded to his inflammatory comments with the same, that he's going to use nuclear submarines. Well, I would ask, for what purpose? I can tell you that nuclear submarines of any type will make no significant difference to the battlefield.
Yeah, and yeah, but it could just get us sucked in. I'm actually looking at something here on my screen. Unfortunately, I can't display it here. But this actually started a number of days before that between Lindsey Graham and Dmitry Medvedev. So he's been trolling our leaders for some time. Lindsey Graham wrote, he said, to those in Russia who believe that President Trump is not serious about ending the bloodbath between Russia and Ukraine, you and your customers will soon be sadly mistaken, referring to these imposition of the sanctions. You will soon see that Joe Biden is no longer president, to which Medvedev replied, Trump's playing the ultimate, Lindsey Graham replied to Medvedev first, who said Trump's playing the ultimatum game with Russia. 50 days or 10, he should remember 2 things. 1, Russia is not Israel or even Iran. And then 2, each new ultimatum is a threat and a step in a wrong direction. And then you had Graham's response. To that response, then Dmitry Medvedev adds, it's not for you or Trump to dictate when to get at the peace table. Negotiations will end when all of our objectives in our military operations have been achieved. Work on America first, Gramps. That's the part that apparently Trump didn't like. So he replies back now with this comment here, and just because apparently it's just happened, we haven't seen any response here. Okay, well, there, great. Gary's got that one up there too. He said, words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. And I just got to be asked, what in the hell are you talking about? I mean, this is alarming to me because frankly, it's like two high school sophomores, just battering back and forth, either on, trying to troll each other on social media or whatever, two kids. But you're talking about two nuclear powers. And when it's one thing for Medvedev, he's not in a position of power. Trump does have the power of the nuclear button. And when he's talking that way, that can't do anything positive. What do you expect the Russian response to this will be based on what you know?
What I suspect is that, Medvedev has always been publicly much more fiery than Putin. And what I suspect, Putin's in charge, and I suspect that the response will be measured. The Russians can respond. They can actually station nuclear submarines off the coast of the continental USA, and indeed, whether on both seaboards of the USA, and that's well within their capabilities. And I doubt that that Putin will go that far. I think he'll see this as a storm in the X or whatever teacup, I would like to think, and just get on with what he's doing. But the Russians are very capable of responding. Furthermore, they're also capable of responding in a way which the West can't match. So Russians don't need to use nuclear weapons to damage the West in ways which we can't respond. With Iskander missiles, with hypersonic missiles they've got available, Gary, we can't defend against those. Yeah, we can't defend American bases scattered around the world against these missiles. We can't defend NATO bases. So, we've got to be super careful. I find it really difficult to understand that some of the military advice, which I assume is being given to, for example, NATO countries, and seems to be wanting to double down, isn't taking account of these critical vulnerabilities. I wrote about this, I think, about 4 or 5 months ago, in which I explained that NATO would lose a war with Russia. These vulnerabilities haven't been changed, and they won't be changed for at least 5 years, and I doubt we will ever catch up. So I think this is really a person with a weak set of cards actually sort of getting angry because somebody with a very strong set of cards is saying that we're not going to be bluffed by you. We are going to achieve our objectives on the battlefield. We know that we can't achieve them by diplomacy, and whatever you say, this is what we're going to do. So question now is how the West deals with a situation in which we can't stop the Russians achieving their objectives on the battlefield without an escalation which would take us into an even bigger defeat.
Right. Yeah, and as you pointed out at the outset here, and if that gets into the nuclear realm, then it's lights out for everybody. God help us all if that happens. I want to circle back around to Ambassador Polyansky's comments at the UN Security Council yesterday, to where he's saying, listen, we had a deal on the table. We tried negotiations. We tried diplomacy, and the war could have been over at the very beginning, just 2 or 3 months in. And I guess kind of connecting that to what you just said, that your view is that the Russians are saying now there's not going to be any diplomacy. Is that just him laying the foundation, do you think, for, no, we're going to win it on the battlefield?
I think it's something else. It's similar, but not quite the same. I think the Russians are not saying there's not going to be any diplomacy. I think what the Russians are probably saying is there hasn't been any diplomacy. There haven't been any meaningful debates at all. We've had situations where we've had peace conferences at which the Russians haven't been invited. I mean, how diplomatically incompetent is that? And it's unbelievable that one of the parties, and the powerful parties to the campaign, has not been invited. And there's as Ian Proud, you and I both know well, has said, we've sort of we make a great celebration out of not having diplomacy with the Russians, despite the fact that we talked to the Russians throughout the Cold War. It's a level of diplomatic incompetence which I think is almost impossible to believe. So I think that the Russians there have sort of thought to themselves, well, okay, and I think I've been saying this for about 4 or 5 months now, but I think Putin has said, keep going to the Russian general staff. They will have a strategy. I think I've got some ideas of what the ultimate objectives of that strategy will be. But keep going. And if we do get a good offer from the West, then we can perhaps talk. But until then, we will keep going, and we will achieve our security objectives on the battlefield, because it's impossible talking to the West.
Well, perhaps exactly lining up with what you said there, this was a comment also from yesterday from Vladimir Putin, who was with Lukashenko in a summit. They were outside in some park, it looked like, and he addressed the issue of the current negotiations.
Yes, they are still the same. The goals of Russia remain the same, but until that, we've been told it's unclear what Russia wants. Well, we formulated those goals last June last year, at a meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The most important is to eliminate the root cause of the conflict. And of course, there are humanitarian issues, security issues in the broad sense.
So he seems to be saying, yeah, you didn't do diplomacy before. We had it on the table. Diplomacy is still on the table here, all as long as these conditions that we want are going to be met. And how is that being received in the West? And what is, for example, Keir Starmer or the British government, or really even the European Union? How are they responding to that opening?
I think all of the European countries seem to be stuck as a stuck record, I think, because they seem to still not be able to understand the difference between solving the long-term problems of the war and having a ceasefire. And they seem to think that the Russians will accept going to a ceasefire, and who knows what might happen. Of course, you might find that the Ukrainians actually start to stabilize the front, or they withdraw to better positions. So in other words, it's a military advantage to the Ukrainians to have a ceasefire. And the Russians, of course, don't want that. I mean, I wouldn't want that. If I'm in a situation where I am in the ascendancy and I can see my objectives in sight, then why on earth would I want a ceasefire? And the Ukraine and the European leaders in particular seem to be completely stuck on this issue. It seems that they're unwilling to accept that actually the Russians have offered diplomatic conditions, and each time that we've refused, then the Russians have made progress, and the next time round, surprise, surprise, then the conditions that they're offering are more severe. And well, who can blame them? So I think the Russians now, I've got a theory, and let me just test this out on you and see what you think. I think the ultimate issue for the Russians is probably going to be denazification is going to be difficult, but actually they're looking for a security situation where they feel their security has actually been is about as secure as they can be in difficult circumstances. I think there's a minimum and a maximum. I think the minimum is getting to the Dnieper River and establishing a boundary there, but I'm inclined to think the maximum is actually what Putin, you'll hear him say occasionally, Novorossiya. What that essentially means is going across the Dnieper River, and that may be the reason why the Russians haven't dropped those bridges on the Dnieper River. Getting across probably north of Odessa. I doubt that they want to actually try to invest Odessa, because I think they'd rather take it in an easier way. But cutting off Odessa from Kiev and the rest, and essentially leaving what would be a rump Ukraine. And that would, I think, meet Russia's security requirements. It wouldn't be a pretty end to the conflict. But I think I would, for once, disagree slightly with John Mearsheimer and with Alex Mikhailov, who said that nobody wins at the end of this. I can imagine a situation where the Russians have got to Novorossiya. They've established really pretty significant boundaries around Novorossiya. They've got left a rump Ukraine, which is essentially comprised of natural Ukrainians, comprised of both those who you could call the Europeanists, who want to be closer to Europe and NATO, and the nationalists, who are sort of extreme, as we know, the Nazis, if you like, at the end of it. And I can imagine the Russians saying, okay, well, we're going to cut off, we're not going to try and get involved in that mess. But what we will do is contain it. And it's almost a reverse containment to the containment which George Kennan worked out for the West against Russia in the first place. The Russians have little interest now economically in Europe. They don't see it as a very useful market, and they'd like to be able to sell oil and gas to us, but there's no sign of that. So all they need to do really is contain us. And as far as I can see, if they've done the same sort of analysis that I've done and others have done, then we're going to wear ourselves out. We're going to actually economically collapse and get worse and worse. So they won't have to worry about us if we've got no industrial capacity, because we've managed to shut our economies down through, amongst other things, boomerang sanctions. So I can see the Russians getting into a situation where they secure Novorossiya, and then they really settle down. You know, they guard against the Baltics, but essentially it's containment. So they're not trying to invest. We know that they don't want to invest in the rest of NATO. Instead, what they're trying to do is just contain us, and they, meanwhile, will start to build much stronger, even stronger economic ties with everybody to the east of the NATO states and to the south. So getting much more further involved in the global south, and much more further involved in the great, the world island, and working closely with China, India, and places like Iran, the BRIC states, all of whom are growing. So to me, I think there is it's a satisfactory solution for the Russians, not a good one, but disastrous for NATO. Yeah. The question is, how does NATO and how did the West cope with that failure?
In the complex and often shadowy world of global security, few systems evoke as much intrigue and apprehension as Russia's so-called dead hand. Officially known as Perimeter, this Cold War-era system is the stuff of both military strategy and popular legend, a mechanism designed to ensure that Russia could retaliate with nuclear force even if its highest leadership were wiped out in a surprise attack. Recent references to dead hand by prominent Russian figures have reignited public interest and concern, prompting many to ask, what is dead hand? How does it work? And what does its existence mean for the world today? To understand the dead hand system, we first have to revisit the dark logic of nuclear deterrence. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union amassed vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, each capable of devastating the other many times over. This balance of terror, known as mutually assured destruction, rested on the assumption that neither side would dare launch a preemptive strike, knowing that the other could retaliate in kind. But what if one side's leadership were obliterated in a first strike, unable to give the order to retaliate? The Soviets saw this as a potentially fatal vulnerability. In the late stages of the Cold War, Soviet military planners developed Perimeter, the dead hand, not as an offensive weapon, but as the ultimate insurance policy. Its purpose was chillingly straightforward: to guarantee that a nuclear response would be unleashed automatically, even if the chain of command was destroyed or communications severed. The mere knowledge of its existence was intended to deter any adversary from considering a decapitation strike. So, how does the dead hand work? While exact details remain classified and shrouded in secrecy, enough information has emerged from declassified documents, expert analysis, and rare interviews to piece together a picture. Perimeter is not a single device or button, but an automated command and control system. It stands as a last resort option, activated only when Russian authorities believe a nuclear attack is imminent or underway. Here's how the system is believed to function. In a period of heightened tension, Russia's top military and political leaders can choose to activate Perimeter. Once armed, the system monitors a network of sensors for signs of nuclear detonations, seismic activity, abnormal radioactivity, or the loss of communication with key command centers. If these catastrophic conditions are detected and certain protocols are met, Perimeter takes control. At that point, the system will send a go signal through a network of command missiles. These specially designed missiles don't carry warheads themselves. Instead, as they fly across Russian territory, they broadcast launch commands to silo-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, mobile launchers, and even submarine-based missiles. In effect, Dead Hand becomes the conductor of a doomsday orchestra, ensuring that Russia's nuclear arsenal is unleashed, even if those who would normally give the order are gone. It's important to note that Perimeter is not entirely autonomous. Human judgment is required to activate the system in the first place. This key safeguard was reportedly built in to prevent accidental Armageddon, a fail-deadly mechanism rather than a fail-safe one. Only if the leadership is incapacitated and the system's sensors confirm a devastating attack does Perimeter execute its grim mission. The existence of Dead Hand was kept secret for years, but in the decades since the end of the Cold War, Russian officials and military experts have gradually acknowledged its reality. Reports suggest that Perimeter remains operational, albeit updated and maintained to modern standards. The system is periodically tested and reportedly still forms a cornerstone of Russia's nuclear posture. Why does Dead Hand matter in today's geopolitical landscape? Its continued existence is a stark reminder of how the logic of mutual destruction persists, even after the Cold War's end. The idea behind Dead Hand is not unique to Russia. Other nuclear powers maintain their own forms of second strike capability, though few are as automated or as shrouded in legend. The system's very presence is meant to deter adversaries from ever considering a decapitating first strike, maintaining the fragile balance that keeps nuclear powers in check. But Dead Hand also raises profound questions and concerns. Critics argue that automating the decision to launch nuclear weapons, even with safeguards, introduces new risks. What if sensors malfunction, or if false signals trigger an unintended launch? What if the system is activated during a period of political chaos or miscommunication? The consequences of a mistaken launch would be catastrophic on a global scale. Furthermore, the renewed references to Dead Hand by Russian officials in contemporary rhetoric, such as recent warnings to foreign leaders, underscore the continued relevance of nuclear brinkmanship in international politics. Such statements are often intended to signal resolve, to remind adversaries of the ultimate stakes involved in any confrontation with a nuclear-armed Russia. For the rest of the world, the existence of the Dead Hand system is a sobering fact. It's a reminder that, despite decades of arms control agreements and diplomatic efforts, the threat of nuclear war, however remote, has not disappeared. Instead, it has evolved, taking on new forms as technology advances and as geopolitical rivalries persist. In the end, Perimeter is both a technical marvel and a symbol of humanity's ongoing struggle with the dangers of its own inventions. It embodies the paradox at the heart of nuclear deterrence, that the ultimate guarantee of peace may rest on the willingness to unleash unimaginable destruction. The system's legacy is a call for vigilance, dialogue, and continued efforts to reduce the nuclear threat, lest the machinery of apocalypse, once set in motion, escapes the control of those who built it. As the world faces new challenges and uncertainties, the story of Dead Hand serves as a powerful reminder of the stakes involved in nuclear policy. It urges leaders and citizens alike to consider not just the weapons themselves, but the systems, safeguards, and decisions that surround them. The hope, as always, is that such systems will never be used, but that they will continue to prompt the world toward caution, cooperation, and ultimately disarmament. Stay with APT News for in-depth analysis and the latest updates on global security, nuclear
is a highly economically ideological cabinet and cabal around Trump, and a highly incompetent cabal around Trump, who doesn't necessarily have a they may know where they want to go, but they have no idea how to get there, right? So what we're looking at, let's start with this. Let's start with this latest dangerous foolishness. Trump orders U.S. nuclear subs repositioned over statements from ex-Russian leader Medvedev. So Trump says, okay, he gets in an argument with Dmitry Medvedev on social media, as you know, and I mean, to me, you're president of the United States, and you're getting in social media arguments. You know, I've known people who have gotten into social media arguments with other people. And every one of them, when I've looked at them, I've questioned their sanity. I've questioned their ability to really be able to consider, here's a better word, emotional intelligence. There was a great book, I think it was Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence, right? There's intellectual intelligence. And we've all known people that were intellectually intelligent, but emotionally were, toddlers, right? And if you're arguing with somebody on social media, your emotional intelligence is pretty low. I mean, that is just indicative that you have very low emotional intelligence, right? So Donald Trump's arguing with me. He's the president of the United States. He's arguing with Dmitry Medvedev, and so at any rate, let's go read this. In a warning to Russia, how that's a warning to Russia? In a warning to Russia, think about what sense that even makes. Russia has the nuclear capability to turn the United States into a parking lot, and the United States has a nuclear capability to turn Russia into a parking lot. So what kind of a warning is it? Hey, you better watch it because I'll kill us both. It's suicide bomber thoughts. But okay, this is the U.S. empire, and this is how the idiot lunatics in this right. Russian President Donald Trump said Friday he's ordering the reposition of 2 U.S. nuclear submarines based on the highly provocative statements of the country's former president. So based on what the former president said, I'm going to put 2 more nuclear subs in the area. Now, first question, does that change the equation any? What does that do? There's thousands of nukes pointing at each other. It kind of reminds me of once, was it Asimov? Someone who said that the nuclear arms race is like a group of people standing in a all of them standing waist deep in gasoline, arguing over who has the most matches. Only takes one. As soon as you light the first match, boom, right? So Trump posted on his social media site that based on the highly provocative statements from Medvedev, he had ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than that. The president added, words are important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. It wasn't immediately clear what impact Trump's order would have on U.S. nuclear subs, which are routinely on patrol in the world's hotspot, but it comes at a delicate moment in the Trump administration's relations with Moscow, right? Now, here's what my immediate thought is. I don't even know if they reposition subs. You know what I mean? Because here's the bottom line. There's nuclear subs off the coast of Russia all the time. There's nuclear subs off the coast of the U.S. all the time. There's multiple nuclear warheads all over creation pointed at everybody all the time. The reality, in the physical reality that we deal with, repositioning 2 nuclear subs does absolutely nothing. And everybody involved knows that. Now, what does repositioning, what does saying, whether you did it or not, what does saying that you reposition 2 nuclear subs do? It just, it's an ego thing. Oh yeah, you're gonna get smart with me. You think you can talk to me like that? Watch this. Put 2 nuclear subs in the area. Ha ha, checkmate. I showed you my power. It's a demonstration of power, but it's still a Mexican standoff. If I got a gun pointed between your eyes and you got one pointed between my eyes, and neither one of us wants to pull the trigger, right? The bottom line is, what good does it do to threaten you? Ha ha, I'll punch you too. Look at this. I got a boxing glove on this hand. What difference does it make? We both got guns pointing at each other. If one shoots, one may shoot first, one may not shoot. What's going to happen? I don't know. But the bottom line is, both of us are facing death. And to threaten somebody, and let me add this. Is it logical that because Dmitry Medvedev uses the word dead hand. Think about this. He used the term dead hand. What does dead hand mean? Pretty much what most nuclear countries have. And that is, at least the major nuclear countries have this, a computerized program or people in bunkers, whatever the case, some manner in which if there was a decapitation strike against their capital and all the decision makers were killed, they still have a backup plan, dead hand. In other words, all of our decision makers are dead. We still have a hand that will push the button and make sure the other person's gone too. Mutually assured destruction. So Dmitry Medvedev used the dead hand term. Okay. Oh no. Dmitry Medvedev, I mean, and I'm just going logically because none of this is logical, but I'm just going to, for the purpose of this discussion, inject something that's not involved in this, which is logic. So logically speaking, Medvedev invoked a term that means if you launch a decapitation strike at us first, we have a method to respond. It won't work. If you attack us with a decapitation strike, we have a system in place that will respond and subsequently launch a strike back at you. So it's a reminder of mutually assured destruction. In fact, one could argue that Medvedev's comments are to avoid nuclear war, is to say, don't do anything dangerous because sure, we'll die, but you'll just, let me remind you, you'll all die too. So what's the point? And Trump says, well, just in case it's more than words, what would it be? Why does it need to be more than words? He says, words are important. That can often lead to consequences. I hope this will not be one of those answers. Just in case these foolish, and he says, based on his highly provocative statements, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. They are more than just that. They're statements of fact. If you launch a decapitation strike at me and kill all of my people, we have a system in place that will respond. Yes, it is more than words. It is a fact. So just in case it's more than words. Yeah, no, not just in case it's more than words. In fact, it is more than a threat. It is a statement of reality. That's like me standing there holding a bomb in my hand with the plunger on my thumb, and you got a gun on my hand pointing at me, and I said, we're in the room. And you're saying, I'll shoot you. And I'm saying, well, if you shoot me, I got my thumb on a plunger, and I'm loaded with explosives, nails all around me, and we're the only two in the room, and I got this plunger, my thumb on a plunger. Boom, my thumb goes up, we both go. You point the gun at me. Say, Garland, I'll blow you away. And I'd say, and if you do, my thumb comes off this trigger, because as soon as I die and go limp, my thumb comes off the trigger. You can't get over here fast enough to stop it. You're on the other side of the room. So if you shoot me and my thumb comes off the trigger, you'll be just as dead as I am. So we need to negotiate. You don't need to shoot me, and I don't need to let my thumb. In fact, you need to hope that my thumb doesn't get tired, that it's not, that I'll start sweating. Don't make me too upset, because if it sweats, it may slip off. Any way you look at it, we both die, right? Now, what are you going to say? I think that's a threat. Well, in fact, it's more than just a threat. It's a statement of fact. You do that. If A happens, then B happens. And the result is C. We both die, right? That's up. A plus B makes the outcome of C. And consequently, A gives you the outcome of C. Because if you do A, then B is axiomatic. It's an axiom. If you do A, B is self-evident. And that gives you C, you die too. You might as well put the gun in your mouth and shoot yourself, unless you just want to shoot it, right? So for Trump to say, oh, just in case they're more than just words, none of it makes sense. And the fact of the matter is this. It's what we're seeing in policy now. Oh, you offended me, country A, you're getting sanctioned. It's pretty much the opposite of what we got with what Trump said he was going to do with MAGA. But let me continue on with that before we get to the whole economic part of it. So in a nutshell, what we're looking at is Donald Trump being in a situation that he can't deal with. For starters, and when I say can't deal with, I mean he's unable to deal with. He's ill-equipped to deal with. The neocons figured something out. The first go round, 4 years, they used Russiagate, and they tried to keep him pinned down, keep his ears pinned down, come after him constantly, tried to attack him using Russia. So Russiagate was the weapon of choice to take Trump out and to neuter him, right? To minimize his power, his authority, to make it so he can't take an action, particularly regarding Russia, that they don't like. Okay, to go after foreign policy. This go round, and I do think, in my opinion, that Trump is intellectually and cognitively diminished this time. I'm not saying he's Joe Biden. I'm saying he ain't as sharp as he was the first go round. That's apparent to me. But at any rate, whether or not he's moving towards Joe Biden, I don't know. But he ain't clearly he's not as sharp as he was the first go around. And I'm not saying that the first go around he was he was Stephen Hawking by any stretch of imagination. I'm just saying he was a lot sharper the first go around than he is now, even though his policies probably wouldn't have been crap if he could have instituted them. But I think what his adversaries have realized now is whether it's, hey, we can't use Russiagate to go after him this time, or it's simply we realize that he ain't that sharp and can easily be manipulated, rather than go head to head and fight him and try to take him out and diminish him. They're just looking at him saying, I think we can outfox him. So one of the things I think that's important here to understand that's going on with Trump, foreign policy, particularly regarding Russia. Apparently, there's a lot of reports that Lindsey Graham or whoever, some neocon, has threatened Trump by saying, excuse me, we got 80 senators, and this 500% tariff, whatever it is, they're going to institute that. We're going to vote on it. It's going to pass. It's going to go to you. And if you veto it, we got enough people, you need a 2/3 majority. We got a 2/3 majority in Congress. We'll push it through anyway. Now, here's where Trump ain't that sharp. Here's the reality. If you do that, okay, if they threaten Trump and say we got 80 people that want to take this foreign policy move, because this is not an economic move, although it has economic consequences, it's a foreign policy move. That's why I'm saying before I get to economic, let's deal with foreign policy, military foreign policy, with imperial empire foreign policy. It is a move to deal with the impending cataclysmic loss against Russia in Ukraine. So Trump also has to know that if they do that, it's going to detonate our economy. I mean, come on, China. That what was threatened to happen in last March and April, whatever, remember Liberation Day, and then Trump suddenly realized that everybody was like, yeah, our shelves are going to be empty and our economy is going to crash. And people are going to blame you and they're going to be looking for a rope, buddy. Better not do that. And Trump had to back off, right? When he found out that China wasn't going to fold, he had to back off. Okay. Trump has to realize he'll be in the same exact place. 500% tariffs, whatever, he'll be in the same exact place and the economy will crash. So Trump being afraid of that, I think that's why he backed up. That's one of the reasons he backed up the 10 days. And now, well, it's not going to do any good, but I'm going to do 100% tariffs. Why? Well, it's better than the 500%. So he gets something, but it's not. Here's what I'd have to say. If Trump were smart, here's what he'd do, but he ain't. If he were smart, he'd do the opposite. See, I'm a big believer in this. If somebody threatens you, if somebody says, Garland, I've got tape of you doing whatever, right? From Epstein Island, tape from Epstein Island, you better do what I want, or the Epstein Island tape goes out. I'm a big believer in this. When you get blackmailed, now tape from Epstein Island might be a bad example because the things that people did on that were criminal, they can't allow that to go over. But you get my point. We got, tape with you, I don't know, doing something you had no business doing. And there, if you don't, we've got, a phone call of you saying things that you shouldn't say or whatever, right? And we're going to release it out and you'll be embarrassed and humiliated. I would have to say to them, play your hand. I mean, would I be embarrassed, humiliated, whatever? But I have to say to them, you got to play your hand because You can only play it once. If I do what you want, this ain't gonna be the last time. You'll come back every other month. Oh, now we got something else we want you to do, Garland. No, I got to tell you, you know what? You want me to do something and you're trying to use that leverage. I'm not going to do it. And you use the leverage. And I already won because you wanted me to do something and I didn't do it. And the only thing you had was the leverage. But if I don't do it, it ain't leverage. It's just a blunt object. Well, I'm going to get you, Garland. I'll release that. You can release it if you want to. You ain't going to get what you want. So go ahead and release it. Yeah, but you're not get what you want. Just you release that and then go on about your business and say, darn, I went through all that trouble of taping Garland's phone conversation and he said blah, 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 blah. And I said, I got him now. I'll humiliate him to no end, but he's going to give me what I want because I can blackmail him with it. And then you call Garland and say, Garland, I got the blackmail. You better do what I want. And Garland says, I don't care what color your mail is, dude. Play your hand. The answer is no. Now you went through all that trouble, spent all that money to get leverage, but it's only leverage if I do what you want. If I don't, it ain't leverage. And once you play it, it's gone. So I say, play your only hand one time, play it. Then after that, I'm going on with my life and I'll start doing the patch up of it. I'll start, fixing things behind it, but it is what it is. I ain't going to be your blackmailed puppet, right? So here's my point. In saying all of that, Lindsey Graham says, well, Trump, either you do 100% tariffs or I'll go back to the Senate and we'll do 500% tariffs. And if you veto it, we'll override it. And if I was Trump, I'd say, well, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do 500% tariffs. You see, my friends, it'll detonate our economy. 100% tariffs will detonate our economy. You and I both know, Lindsey Graham, that if you do that, it's going to detonate our economy. And I'm going to veto it, and then you're going to override it, and you're going to do it, and our economy is going to collapse. But before it collapses, I'm going to go on TV, and I'm going to say, American people, I got to have a talk with you. Lindsey Graham led a group of senators, and they came to me and they said they wanted to do this 500% tariff thing. And I said, I stand for the American people. It'll hurt the working class. It'll collapse our economy. The price of gas will go up. We'll have massive layoffs. I begged them. I argued with them. I threatened them. I did everything I could to stop them. But I couldn't stop them. I vetoed it and they passed it. So I just have this to say to you, American people. The repercussions of what these lunatics are about to do to our economy will be massive and you will suffer. But I want you to know that I'm fighting for you. I want you to know that I'm trying to stop it. I'm demanding right now that they stop it. And I will be demanding every day that they stop it because you are going to pay a terrible price. And I am in opposition to it. Now, that's what I do if I'm Trump. Then what does Lindsey Graham do? Does he and his 80 senators pass it? Detonate the economy, and I still go on every day and say, well, boy, gas prices are going through the roof. I try to tell them, they won't listen to me. American people, I'm going to lead a rally in Washington, D.C. on September the 15th. And then that rally, we're going to say, get rid of the 500% tariffs. It's destroying our economy. We're going to call it the Nixon rally. See what I'm saying? If they threatened Trump, if you don't do 100% tariffs, we're going to do 500. I say, okay, well, you're going to have to do that because I ain't doing it. Never let anybody drag you around by the short and curlies. It appears to me, Trump has said, well, the Russians are not really going to do any good to them. Look, the Indians and the Chinese have both said, we're going to keep buying it. You're not telling us what to do. We're powerful countries. We are just going to keep buying it. If you do 100%, you do 100%. You know what's going to happen. The Chinese are going to say, you know what? So much for those rare earths. Oh, and by the way, it is what it is. I guess we ain't doing business again. Walmart and Amazon's going to be looking kind of bare, ain't they? So how can Trump do it? I suspect he'll do sanctions, but tariffs, 100% tariffs, that's tariffs on me and you, not on Russia and China and India. So the bottom line is, he allowed them to back him into a corner because he don't have the backbone reality. He's all mouth and he doesn't have the backbone. He doesn't have the strength when he is threatened. He doesn't have the strength. If he is, and that's the word. The word out is that they told him they got 80 senators that'll pass it anyway. You got to say to them, that's what you're going to have to do. Well, if you veto, we'll override it. That's what you're going to have to do, because I'm going to veto it. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I can't control you guys. It's going to detonate our economy. So now the bottom line is Trump is saying on August 8th, that'll be 10 days from his original, which would be next Friday. What Trump is saying, next Friday, 100% tariffs on China and Russia, and who knows, I guess Turkey also, Iran, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia buys a lot of Russian. In fact, I think they buy Russian diesel. I think they buy some of it and resell it. Saudi Arabia does business. So we're going to do 100% tariffs on Saudi Arabia. Well, gee, we buy oil from Saudi Arabia, don't we? 100% tariffs on that. Additionally, here's the other thing about the tariffs. That again, the boy emperor, that's absurd. So Trump says, we're going to do tariffs on Canada. Why? Because they're recognizing Palestine. I didn't know that was part of the economic health of the United States. Trump ran on Make America Great Again, America First, MAGA, right? And now, what does Trump say? Oh, by the way, I'm the peace president. And now the reality is coming out, 6-7 months in. What's Trump saying? Number one, I'm sending nuclear subs over towards Russia. And by the way, Russia, now, when he says a deal with Russia, he means capitulation. Russia has to do what we want, to which Russia says, well, we're not going to do that. Well, in that case, I'm sanctioning everybody else, anybody who buys your oil. The more countries that buy the oil, the more difficult it is on the U.S. The more countries that buy oil from Russia, the more difficult it is on the U.S. And might I add, as hard as it is on the U.S., and apparently the Europeans are saying they're going along with this. In a way, good. In a way, good, because it will hasten the end of these Nazi regimes, of these totalitarian regimes in Europe. It'll hasten the end, because the U.S. does have some oil of its own and can get some oil from Canada and stuff like that. Now, number one, if it were to actually, here's the other thing. One of the things I've said, even when you win, you lose. You ever heard that term? Even if you win, you lose, right? Meaning, even if you get what you want, you're not going to get what you want, right? If you say, for the sake of argument, that Donald Trump said, all right, 100% tariffs, India and China, particularly, stop buying Russian oil. If India and China stop buying Russian oil, where are they going to get it from? Oh, no, you can't get it from Iran. They're sanctioned too. Okay, so they got to buy it from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, things like that, as if there's enough oil to go around. But what's going to happen to the price of oil? It's going to skyrocket. You take Russian oil off the market, the price of energy will skyrocket. And you'll have trouble getting it, because I don't think they pump enough. But here's a greater problem. Saudi Arabia buys Russian oil, which means they got 100% tariffs, which means if we buy oil from from Saudi Arabia, when it gets here, we got a tariff in at 100%. Or if Saudi Arabia stops buying Russian oil, they won't need to. They'll make so much money. The price of oil could go up 50 to 100%. So now, let's just, for the sake of argument, gas is $4 a gallon. Now it's $5.50, $6 a gallon. How's that going to work? Our economy is going to go to hell, and you'll have trouble getting gas. There'll be a gas shortage. For what? And what are we doing again? This is over the Ukraine conflict, a conflict that Russia is winning. Might I add that there's no way that Russia's going to lose this. Ukraine is set up to lose. You armed them with inferior arms against an opponent that was already superior. And then you gave them ragtag stuff here. We got some of these tanks, use those, and some of those tanks use them. And some of these tanks use those, and some of those, and stuck everything together in all different ways. And you utilize people, to be quite frank, from what I've seen of the NATO and Western military minds, I am not impressed. I mean, you threw these people right out into the middle of the minefields and just called, they literally said, yes, we're going to do a counteroffensive. I saw some of the video. And it was like, okay, here's a group of Ukrainians, and we'll send them out to go after the Russians straight into the minefield. Oh, what do you know? They all got killed. Okay, send another group. They just sent these people to be slaughtered like lambs. That's not a war. But they put a whole lot of NAPO trolls on Twitter. I guess that was supposed to do something for a while. So they waged an information war. They threw the Ukrainians into the minefields to get slaughtered like dogs. And now that reality is catching up on them. The best they can do is say, we're going to detonate our own economy. The reality is this. The empire is crashing, and the world is looking at it. The empire is irrational, and the world's looking at it. And the best that the U.S. is going to be able to do is blame one guy. The best the U.S. empire is going to be able to do is just blame it on Trump. As if Trump somehow decides to say, we're going to do 100% tariffs on India and China. What happens if India and China don't want to play along? What happens if we go back to where we were last spring? And China says, turn all your ships around and bring them back. Because, I mean, come on, 100% is not. It might as well be 1 million. It might as well be 500%. So China turns their ships around. And then we're sitting there saying, what about all that stuff that we usually get from China? We ain't going to be getting that for a while. Walmart, they'll be empty in 4 or 5 weeks. How long can we hold? We'll be where we were before. And China will surely retaliate. Most likely with what do you call it? Rare earth minerals, but other stuff. So now what we have is, I think the other part of it is this. We have to, people who are Trump supporters, former Trump supporters, current Trump supporters, future Trump supporters for that matter, have to come to have to accept a stark reality, and that is MAGA is dead. Long live MAGA. MAGA's done. It's dead. And the question about MAGA is this. What happens to MAGA now that they gave the keys to a carnival barker and he, swallowed them? He dropped them overboard. As I've said many times, you have to understand MAGA. MAGA ain't Trump. 2008. On the so-called left, you had what was that called? Occupy Wall Street, and that was a reaction to the bailouts and Wall Street and all of that. And I truly believe a big part of what happened with Occupy Wall Street, knowing people who were involved, who went there, know a lot about it, that it was really infiltrated by deep state. Yeah, really infiltrated by deep state. Yes, I'm pretty sure of that for a number of reasons. They got in there, they brought in the anarchists, so-called anarchists, and the way they clogged everything up was just said, look, anything we do has to be unanimous. If it isn't unanimous, we have to vote on everything, and then it has to be unanimous. And if it isn't unanimous, we can't do it. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for a log jam. You'll never be able to do anything. So I'm pretty sure that Occupy Wall Street was completely infiltrated and taken over by agent provocateurs from the deep state, and it just dissolved. It fell apart. It was nothing. A bunch of people standing around tents, and there were people that went in and said, "Are you making demands?" No, we're not going to talk to us. Just, I'm not saying you could at least say we're starting a revolution. I don't know, whatever you wanted to do, but they were doing nothing, going nowhere. Okay, that was the so-called left, right? The Democratic Party's version of the left, at least. And then the conservatives woke up something called the Tea Party, right? And it was called, that bit taxed enough already, but that had some life to it. And a bunch of Tea Party people won in 2010, but a lot of them were AOC types. They got in there and they just filled their filthy pockets and went on about their business. But the Tea Party was around, and what was their first argument? The first argument of the Tea Party was the bailouts are wrong and we're pissed about it. It was legitimate. It was a legitimate, and some cultural, maybe some outcome difference, how you get there, etc. Differences with them, but it was a legitimate, you would call it a populist, maybe conservative, right wing. It was a legitimate conservative backlash and movement, and strong, very, very powerful, large. And that was around, and then they hadn't got their appetite satiated, shall we say, their thirst for change. And Trump came along and he gave them the MAGA stuff. Yes, make America great again, blah, blah, blah. And they latched onto it. Now, like, okay, that's great, we can run with it. But Trump, and most Democrats think that it's just about Trump, that those people don't care about anything, no matter what Trump does. I don't believe that. Is there an element like that in the Trump base? I believe there is. But I also think there's a very powerful element who really kind of believes what they say. You know, when they say, hey, we're America first, they mean America first. They mean spend the money here, not overseas. When they say we're sick and tired of foreign military entanglements, they mean that. And there is a significant percentage of that group who is already leaving Trump, walking away, and they're sick, and they've had it with they're with the Republican Party, where I am with the Democrats. And they're like, look, I tried with these people, but they ain't going to listen, and I'm done. And they won't be easily brought back. So now Trump's complete and total betrayal of MAGA, I don't think that a lot of the MAGA people are just going to fold their hands and say, okay, well, we wanted certain things, we didn't get those, we got the opposite, we got Epstein, we got MAGA, make Israel great again, we got neoconservatism, we got the continuation of the Biden wars, we got even more bloated federal budget, all of the things we didn't want, we're getting all of them. Oh, by the way, we're getting censored. Everything we didn't want and everything you promised we wouldn't get, we're getting. I think there is a huge element that will react in a negative way and won't just accept that and won't just lay down and take it. I believe that. And the Democratic Party, yeah, I'm worried about them because they're, you know what I mean? A perfect example was there's this woman, she's a Democrat, and she's like the first transgender Democrat ever. And now she's bragging, in Congress. But she's bragging that this person is bragging about some bill they passed, and it's like a pro Wall Street bill that's going to like allow the Wall Street and the venture capitalists to screw over the working class. That's the Democrats. That's why the Democrats have like 0.00%. I'm being facetious, but like 15% or 20% approval rating, because they're like, yes, we've got a transgender person. We stand for diversity. And you're like, okay, what's this transgender person doing? Oh, screwing us all for Wall Street. I'm supposed to be happy? Like a white guy could do that, or some old Uncle Tom black guy, you can bring him in to shuffle it on in and do what his master tells him. Jewish, it doesn't matter. You can always find somebody to shuffle into Congress to fill their pockets, fill these stinking pockets up and screw us over for Wall Street. You don't have to bring a transgender person in, and we're not going to feel good because it's a transgender person. A diverse group of Wall Street puppets ain't getting the job done. So screw the Democrats. They ain't even part of the conversation. And the Republicans aren't either. But what we see is this. If these reports are all true, 80 of 100 people in the Senate are saying we're going to detonate the economy to make sure to do something. I don't know what that's supposed to do regarding Ukraine. I don't know what it's supposed to do. Is it supposed to force the Russians to do something? And keep in mind something, there are alternative motives here too. I go on Indian TV fairly regularly. And one of the things I've said to them, I said, look, you got Ukraine. That's a Russia soft spot. Taiwan, a China soft spot. I said, and I've been saying this for years. It's just a matter of time before they go after your soft spot, which is the region, the Kashmir or whatever region it is. It's just a matter of time before they go after that, because you aspire to be a world power, and Russia and China's in their crosshairs, and you are too, whether you know it or not. So part of this whole thing also is to stop the rise of India. India aspires to be a world power. One of the things we're seeing here is a move to, they were looking for an excuse to put tariffs on India to hurt India, to stop any economic rise of India, and which is terrible for this reason. I know how much you know about India. There's a lot of poor people there, a lot of extremely poor people. You know, there's 1.5 billion people or something in India, 1.5 billion, right? There's a lot of people there, and there's a lot of poor people. I mean, like some of their cities, Mumbai, one city, Mumbai, the slums of Mumbai, which are, when I say the slums of Mumbai, look it up on YouTube. Lots of people, and they're extremely poor, right? 5 million people, 5 million people, right? So let's watch this. Population slums of Mumbai. See if I can find it. Let me see. 6.5 million people, or about 55% of Mumbai's population, live in slums, with Dhaka being one of the largest slum areas, housing around 1 million residents. Here's where we go. 10 important facts about Mumbai slums. 6.5 million. Most slum houses do not have individual toilets and taps. Residents have to pay to use community toilets, which are rarely maintained, and buy overpriced water from vendors. Some 78% of community toilets in the Mumbai slums lack water supply, and 58% have no electricity. Many slum houses do not have proper doors. I mean, it's bad news. So India, you know, I mean, we should all look at that and say, man, that's a lot of poor people, which means a lot of suffering, right? And human beings should say, well, that's not good. I hope things improve in India, and you know, these impoverished people don't suffer. What's the U.S. looking at it saying? The neocons, the U.S. empire, looks at it and says, look, they're poor, and if they live better off, they'll be a threat to our domination of the world. So we got to do things to make sure they stay poor or get poorer. That's the mentality that we're dealing with here. So part of the motivation for these sanctions, part of them are, yes, we must do whatever to get Russia. This stupidness that says somehow Russia is going to capitulate, which it'll never capitulate. The other is, and I think this is maybe the greatest part of it, is we need an excuse to go after China in any way we can, even though it's an irrational way. That's going to hurt the working class, as if the people in the Senate give a shit about the working class, as if they give a crap about the working class, which they don't. They hate us. They have nothing but condescension towards us and contempt for us. They can't stand us, and we should feel the same way about them, might I add. These people are, oh, I'm with the Democrats, I'm with the Republicans. They hate you. Excuse me, they hate you. And if you're smart, you'll feel the same way about that, about them. Anyway, so a part of this whole thing is pushing Trump, the Trump team, whatever, to take action, to go up against China, to decouple from China. Now, of course, that means you and me get impoverished. That means we may starve. Our lives will be a living hell. But what does Lindsey Graham and those people care? They're going to be doing great. We starve. We suffer. The whole United States turns into the slums of Mumbai. We don't have running water and toilets. What do they care? All the better. We'll be more desperate. We won't be able to fight back or push back. But they're pushing Trump to August 8th, and I think we're going to see what happens then. But the bottom line is, what the Trump team is threatening Their threats are actions that if they get either way, if they take those actions, if they work, it wipes out our economy. If they don't work, it wipes out our economy. I mean, and I said this the other day, you know, when I had Peter Erickson from Conversation Among the Ruins on. I'll tell you what it reminds me of. And this is the danger. They're playing with fire with our economy. Look, what they did before in the spring was quite simple. They would crash the stock market. They said, okay, taxes, you know, China, we're going to do 100, 200% tariffs on China. And the stock market went, boom. But what did they do then? What did they always do? What they do in 2008, what they do in COVID when they crashed the stock market. The stock market crashed. You lower the value of assets dramatically. And the only people that can then buy those assets are those who have a large amount of capital. You lower the price of assets, you go in and buy the assets at rock bottom prices, and when they go back up, you win, right? So one may look at this and say, wait a minute, if they do this, it'll wreck the stock market and crash our economy. And they're like, well, you had me at wreck the stock market, but crash our economy too? That means the value of everything's going to drop. Oh, and then I'll be able to come in and buy all the assets at rock bottom prices, won't I? Yeah. And then when it comes back up, I'll be filthy. I'll be way richer than I was. But that's what they do. Wreck the economy, buy things at rock bottom prices. When it comes back up, however long it takes. If it takes a day, a month, a year, 5 years, doesn't matter. When it comes back up, they make now at one point it ain't gonna come back up. But at this point, that's what they're betting on, and it'll come back up. And it's always worked for them in the past. Why shouldn't they bet on it again? And they get rich. And you lose everything. You lose your job, you lose your pension, you lose this, you lose that, everything. They don't care. They don't care if all the pension funds crash. What do they care? They ain't on pensions. Then they got an argument. Well, so much for Social Security. Guess it's gone. Oh, well, we don't have to cut it anymore. It's gone completely. Medicare. Oh, well, you know, we can't afford those such luxuries as Medicare for you. So that's, you know, too bad. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a class of people who have contempt for the working class, who are taking actions that they know before they do it will have detrimental, extremely detrimental effects on the working class, but they're doing it in the hopes that they can maintain some kind of a world domination, hegemony, or power. That's what they're doing. They're looking out for number one. If you look at the history, look at Britain and like the what was it, the East India Tea Company and stuff like that. What you had and what you have now is this. You don't have a government that's dominated by corporations. You have corporations that have the illusion of a government, when in fact, there's nothing in the way that we're all, some way they view us as corporate slaves or potential corporate slaves. The government is nothing but a public relations outfit and a PR tool and an overall tool for the corporations. So they put them in there. They pay them. They keep their palms greased, and they get what they want. That's what the government is. We don't have people are like having expectations for the government. They do not work for you. They never work for you. They could give a crap about you. They answer to their masters, and their masters are in Wall Street. When people are like, yes, the people in Iran or Hamas or Russia or China, our enemies, or North Korea. My enemies are on Wall Street, dude. My enemies are in Langley, Virginia. They're on Capitol Hill. They're in Northern California. Okay, Silicon Valley. That's where my enemies are. My enemies are not in Russia or China or Iran or none of those places. Oh, there's a lot of working class people there that are my allies, not my enemies. My allies are not other working class people who are being oppressed by the same people that are oppressing me. We have a common enemy, a common oppressor. That's my point. We have a common oppressor, a common enemy. The Wall Street bankers, the Wall Street billionaires, and their puppets on Capitol Hill are the oppressors of the working class people in Africa, in South America, in Detroit, in Mississippi, in Maine. All of us, we are oppressed by the same group of lunatics. And now They're saying we're going to hurt China's economy, but it's going to hurt ours even worse. But they don't care. We are to be sacrificed at the altar of these lunatics. So my point is, I think we have to be vigilant. We have to stay together and understand who our enemies are. Let me also add this. You know, this business about I'm going to sanction Canada because they're going to recognize Palestine. Did MAGA vote for that? Now, no doubt, some of them did, but I've seen between 19 and 49, I saw this the other day, between 19 and 49, 50% of Republicans, have a negative view of Israel. That's high for Republicans. That's high. That's high. That's high. I saw a poll that said only 8% of Democrats are in favor of Israel's military activities in the their genocide. And I'll add this. Recently, I was on Facebook and I saw somebody who I knew and I've known for years. Well, okay, I haven't seen him in years, but I used to know him and I thought that was a nice family and they were nice people, etc. Here's my point. And I see this person posting something about Hamas and the hostages. And I was so enraged that, like, I mentioned something I did post something that said, you know, like, as far as I'm concerned, you know, well, the Israelis should be hostages or something, you know, that this something about the Israel being a bizarre Nazi cult. I don't even remember. I flew into a mad rage, which isn't my nature, but I did. And then I just blocked the person. I'm like, I don't care if they read it or not at that point. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know, for people to look at this bizarre cult in Israel, a cult that says they have to search bags when people are going into Gaza to make sure they don't have baby food. Because if they got baby food, babies might eat it, right? Can't have that when you're trying to starve the population. So when I see a bizarre Nazi death cult that says we have to make sure that no baby food goes in, because there's, you know, tens of thousands of babies there. And if there's baby food, they'll eat it. And we can't have that. And somebody is posting something about Hamas and hostages. There is something profoundly morally sick about that person. Morally, this is sick to me. That's a moral sickness to that person or to people who are so without conscience. You know, let me say this about the conscience business. You know, I like to read, and I've read a lot of books in my day. I mean, a lot. And one of the books, you know, when I think of things, if you know, you've listened to me, I'll always bring up books that I read. And there was a book called The Sociopath Next Door. I'll add it. It's a great book. I will add that to the list of books you should read. But it's about sociopaths. It's a good book, excellent book, but written by a woman, I forgot her name. But one of the things they talk about, the sociopath, the person who has no conscience, they have not, for whatever reason, you know, genetic, whatever, they don't have a conscience. And the question is that a person who we should look at it clinically? Or can we use the word evil for a person who has no conscience, will just do anything that they want for anybody for any reason to feed their sociopathic needs, but could care less about other people? And there's a little discussion. Is that evil or is that clinical? Well, it doesn't matter, because if the sociopath wants something and you got it, they'll kill you. Well, the psychopath sure will, but the sociopath, if they thought they could get away with it, they'd just assume you were dead. They don't have a really concept. So I don't care what you call it. It amounts to the same thing. So that's when I say, when I read, knowing that we have this bizarre Nazi cult that will search bags search boxes and packages going into Gaza to ensure that baby food doesn't get in, right? And before this happened, let's talk about before October 8th. they would look at the amount of food that was going in to Gaza and calculate the average calories that each person would get daily and ensure that it was very, very low. So the people were just on the edge of starvation, and would say they couldn't, things like chocolate, you couldn't get that in there because they'd enjoy that. Well, that's sociopathic. And the discussion of whether it's clinically sociopathic or whether it's evil is a semantic discussion. It's a matter of words. In the real world, what they're doing should easily be classified as evil. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, in the real world, when you're starving people and doing terrible things, we can call that evil. I think it is appropriate to call that evil. So therefore, I say this: when some person who I thought was a nice person, oh, I'm good. My plug came out. I was getting ready to say, oh no, my plug's not in for my computer, but I got plenty of power. So when I see someone who I'm like, oh yeah, they seem like decent people, and they're posting in this day and age, in light of everything that's happened, in light of everything that's going on, in light of the pure, unadulterated evil that we see on a daily basis, and someone posts something about Hamas and the hostages, what are there, 100? Let's say there's a couple hundred hostages for the sake of argument. We call them hostages. What do we call all the people that Israel grabs all the time? What do we call the people who are on a boat trying to deliver food to Gaza, and they take them off the boat and they beat Chris Smalls, remember the Amazon guy? They beat him up. For what? Choke him, beat him up, take the people off. No, beat him. No, you're not going to send food to the starving. Hundreds of thousands dead. Tens of thousands of children. People torn to pieces, maimed, blinded, burned. Entire families wiped out. Genocidal actions. And somebody's like, hey, there's 150 hostages. Do we call that evil? I do. I call that evil. I call that the highest order of evil. And so when I saw that, I'm like, there's a person who, I guess in their mind, hey, they're my people. Those hostages are like me. They're my religion. They're my group. I got to be concerned about my group and my people. Man, the narcissism, the selfishness, there to say, my group. Look, let me tell you something. If somebody came to me and said, hey, Garland, some black guy beat some guy up and robbed him at an ATM store, do you think I'm going to be like, how's the guy doing? Is he okay? Now, I believe in the justice system. Take him in, lock him up, whatever he gets. If he's found guilty, he goes to jail. But I'm not going to disregard the guy that he shot or beat at the ATM. Hey, this guy went in, he's a black guy, and he beat and killed 12 people of a different race. Oh, how's he doing? What about the people that he beat and shot and abused? And afterwards, people are like, oh, it's terrible. Did you hear what happened to those 12 people? I'm like, that's not important now. What happened to the perpetrator? He's like me. He's my religion. He looks like me. He's got hair like me. He's like me. Forget the masses of people that are suffering. Let's just pick out the guy who's like me. The ultimate tribalism. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't even get tribalism. You know, I remember working with this guy who was a very, very conservative guy. And I remember him saying, well, I'm a conservative. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, I've worked with cops. I work with a lot of conservatives. And as a conservative, we generally believe, and I remember thinking, we generally believe? I don't even understand that. I don't believe something because I'm a member of a group. I believe something because I have empirical evidence, data, or at minimum, an intuition. How about we say this? A hunch. Let's go with a hunch. I got a hunch that it's true. I have something that leads. I got an intuition. I just think that that's true. I'm not going to be, hey, Garland, why do you believe that? Well, I'm a member of a group. And as a member of this group, we all believe it. Is it true? Who the hell knows? But our group all believes it. What kind of idiot does that? And the same mentality. Well, you know, I'm a member of this group. Yeah, therefore, people who are members of my group are slaughtering people by the hundreds of thousands. But 150 people in my group, are missing. So we've got to all have a vigil for the 150 missing people of my group, and let's be concerned about them. What about the millions that they are repressing and slaughtering? Oh, I don't understand that. I'm focusing on my group. Man, that is profoundly sick, twisted, and immoral, and I don't get it. That's what I have to say. I don't get it. So I say all that to say this. I just wanted to throw that out there because I don't get it. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. But then again, I guess I don't know, whatever the hell. I guess that's just me. But now we have Donald Trump, who has revealed himself. He's revealed himself for real. And that is now what he's showing is this. He is a Zionist first, Zionist second, Zionist. You know, when my daughter was little, I used to say to her, let me tell you something. Your priority 1 through 9, everything else starts at 10. And I meant it. I meant it, right? And that's the way we should feel with our kids. They got to be priority 1 through 9. Everything else starts at 10. That's a fact. Every parent should feel that way. There's something wrong with you if you don't, and you're going to come up with a real screwed up kid if you don't put them as a high priority. But my point is, that's the way certain things should be in life. You've got to have priorities. Donald Trump has demonstrated something. He said, I'm concerned about inflation. Canada's next door. We buy a lot of stuff from Canada, and they buy a lot of stuff from ours. So if his priority, as he claimed, was the American people and the working class and keeping prices down and making, remember Trump? It's hard to buy. You go to the store and things are too expensive. We need to do something about that. But what does he say? Canada, which we buy a lot of stuff from, and we need Canada, and that helps keep inflation down, and it helps keep low prices. So what does he say? Well, you recognize Palestine. And Canada's like, yeah, which means nothing. They're starving and killing people. And you're like, hey, what are you going to do, Canada? They're starving people. We'll issue a proclamation that we recognize Palestine. And is that going to bring them food or water? Is that going to save anybody in the real world? No, but that's the least we can do. Correct. It is the least you can do. In fact, it is less than the least you can do. You got France and all these other countries saying we're going to recognize Palestine. Oh, kiss my ass. Recognize Palestine. People are starving. I'm seeing pictures of skinny babies dead because they got no food and water. And you think that writing a proclamation and holding it out, hear ye, be it known in one all, we officially recognize Palestine. There ain't going to be nobody there alive. You recognize the ground, but apparently not the people. It's sick. And it's a way that the neoliberals, which Trump is one of them, the imperialists, the murderous fiends, give the illusion that they're taking action without taking action. We're saying you got to give them food and water immediately and medicine and treat them like human beings. And they're saying, well, now we ain't going to do that. Food, water, and medicine, and treat them like human beings. Come on, be real. Well, you think we're going to do that? But what we'll do is we'll take out a piece of paper and we'll scribble something on a document that we officially recognize Palestine or something like that. How's that? No, it ain't. No, that's nothing. I'm sorry. You imagine that? You're sitting there bleeding and you say, hey, oh my God, I'm going to bleed to death. Do you have a Band-Aid? Do you have gauze? Anything I can use? And the person says, yeah, I do. And you're like, great. Can I use your first aid kit? And they're like, no, you can't. But I'm going to bleed to death. Tell you what I'll do. I got a paper and pen here, and I'm going to officially write out how sorry I am about your wound. I'm going to officially recognize your wound. I'm going to request that the entire world all get together and officially recognize that wound and say that that wound should stop bleeding. A lot of good it's going to do me. I need a Band-Aid, perhaps some gauze, pressure on I need to take physical action in the real world. We're talking physics here, kinetic energy. My heart is pumping my blood out. It can't coagulate fast enough to make a scar. I need to stop the bleeding. And your idea of helping me is to write a document that you formally recognize that I've been injured. And you're the one that cut me with a knife. That's what we got here. So let's not be so quick to thank the Canadians and the French for doing nothing. But I say all that to say this. Let me end up. But ultimately, Trump has come clean. And he's come clean and he's just said, look, it was all lies. Look, MAGA, I said, no, it's not America first. I'm a Zionist. I run an empire that is a Zionist. I run an empire. And we will do whatever we have to do for the empire. And you ain't part of the picture. And anything that the Zionists want to do, since I'm a Zionist, is fine with me, no matter how evil. You're not part of it. Any thought that this was a democracy and that people voted Donald Trump in and somehow he was going to represent them, he was going to do what he promised he was going to do, that any of this government is going to do anything that it promises. I got to give it to the Democrats. Now, to be honest, I like the Democrats better than the Republicans. Let me tell you why. Because they don't even have to lie to you. Kamala Harris came clean. Hey, we're going to start wars all over the country. Your money's going to all over the world. Going to set the world on fire. Your money is going to go to the military-industrial complex and foreign policy. As for you, you're screwed. Hey, you know what? I like that better. I could look at that and say, well, I'll never vote for that. That's good. There you go. I love Kamala. Wonderful woman. She told us the truth. Screw you. You get nothing. I don't work for you. You got to give the Democrats credit. Hey, we love the CIA and the FBI. I got to give you credit. Great. You told me the truth. Thank you. Trump, yes, I'm the peace president. I'm standing for peace. I'm here for the little guy. And he does the same damn thing as the Democrats. Could have got that from the Democrats. We don't want it from the Democrats. We didn't want it from you. I didn't vote for you, Donald Trump. I damn sure wasn't going to vote for Kamala Harris. But when you said what you said, I said, I hope maybe it'll be nice if he does. I'm skeptical. You know, it's possible that he said these things. He said those things. Why don't the Democrats say them? I said all that stuff. Kept my eye open. As they say, sleep with one eye open. And watched it. But I couldn't vote for Donald Trump because I just didn't have the faith. And in the end, I'm glad I didn't because it ain't on my conscience. That's, you know what? That's the way I think it's getting to the point in the United States where people aren't going to vote. And you're going to say, are you going to vote? They're going to say no. And you're going to say, why? They're going to say, because I don't want what this next person, this next group of morons to do. I don't want it on my conscience. I know what they're going to do. I know it don't matter what I say or what they say. They're going to do the same thing. I don't want it on my conscience. And I think that's good enough. Thanks a lot, everybody. Let me look and see.
There are more rewrites of the Epstein story than in a Harry Potter fan fiction. It seems like every time I turn around, huge parts of the story, of the official story, have been completely changed to the point that the most interesting part of the story are the rewrites, the changes. Many people like myself have been obsessed with the fact that the facts keep moving as we move the goalposts. First, it was the Epstein list. It existed. It's a cover-up. Then it doesn't exist. Now it's a hoax. Then Trump's going to give us the list. Then we have the changes to the Epstein footage story. It doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Here's the raw footage, except no, we saved it in Premiere Pro multiple times. But now we're getting changes to the story of the very breakup between our president and Jeffrey Epstein. Look, for years, we've been told that Trump kicked out Epstein from Mar-a-Lago because Epstein harassed the daughter of another member. This apparently all happened in 2007, and it sort of symbolized proof of how the president couldn't have been involved in this. After all, why would you kick someone out for being creepy if you were somehow involved in all of it? But now there's a news story coming from our president himself. He expounded in Scotland about the real reason that Jeffrey Epstein and him had a falling out.
But he stole people that work for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again.
and I threw him out of the place.
So there it is. Rather than a member's daughter being harassed, it seems like instead it was over a worker dispute. Immediately after this news story about workers being stolen came out, it was clarified that he's specifically talking about workers being stolen from the spa.
And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, got. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that.
Did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her.
Now, this is a remarkable change in our story because Virginia Giuffre is one of the lead accusers of Jeffrey Epstein. Everyone knew she was recruited at Mar-a-Lago. Now Trump is saying he not only knew about it, this is one of the reasons that he kicked out Epstein, apparently. People complained about Epstein at the time.
Other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that.
Now, the reason this matters is because it completely changes our timeline. Remember, we had heard that he kicked Epstein out for being a creep in 2007. Now, this places us way over in 2000 when we're first hearing complaints from the spa, because Virginia Giuffre, there's a very clear timeline from court documents that she was terminated in 2000 when she would have been a minor. She met Ghislaine Maxwell, not Epstein, but it's also a problem for when everything happened because it's not until 2002. Then there's the famous quote from Donald Trump about Jeffrey Epstein saying, I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's very fun to be with. It's even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them are on the younger side. So if he's already had a falling out over stolen workers, specifically a stolen worker who was later trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, if he had heard complaints about this, if he knew about this, and in 2002, he makes this claim, that's a real problem. Whereas previously, his kicking out and finding out about this apparent harassment of Mar-a-Lago clients, it doesn't happen until 2007. Now we're hearing it's been known about since 2000. So this presents a very fine line that the president has to walk in terms of what he knew when, because obviously you have to stick to your story that you kicked him out for being a creep, right? That's what was originally said. In fact, it's even been repeated by the White House. Stephen Chung in a statement claims the fact is that the president kicked him out of his club for being a creep. So that was the stated reason, but you can't know too much in 2000. Otherwise, it makes you look horrible when you compliment him for enjoying beautiful women. Because if you knew he was a creep and you didn't do anything about it, that's a problem. So when asked to explain this discrepancy, well, you said he was kicked out for being a creep. Then you said you did it because he was stealing your employees. Which is it? At first, we hear that they are related incidents.
President, you said yesterday your falling out with Jeffrey Epstein was over him taking some of the workers from your business. But your administration in the past said that you threw him out because he was a creep. So can you explain that discrepancy?
Well, maybe they're the same thing, sort of a little bit of the same thing.
So there you see, he's saying they're related. Stealing the employees was related to him being a creep. So you knew something, but then later he kind of says, well, I didn't know what he was using these stolen employees for.
At the time, did you know why he was taking those young women, including Virginia?
No, I didn't know.
So the story just keeps changing. I mean, it was 2007 that he kicked him out and closed his membership. Then it's 2000 when Virginia Giuffre was stolen because somehow that was creepy, but he didn't know what was actually happening. So why is it actually creepy that your employee gets stolen? That happens all over the time in companies everywhere. In fact, once again, the White House is adjusting their story, saying that it's just the taking of employees that is creepy. Quote, taking employees is most definitely creepy. How? If you don't know what's happening with this spa employee, how is it weird? Why are they saying, oh, we didn't know anything, but we knew at the time it was creepy? I don't know. It's honestly insane. It makes me crazy following the story, and I have to document every time the story changes so you guys don't believe this nonsense. I mean, it's like it is complete gaslighting. It's driving me crazy, and yeah, I just have to talk about it because we can't allow them to do this.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Let us talk for a second or two about Nadia Marcinko, aka Nadia Marcinkova. Obviously, she was somebody who classifies herself as both a victim and also somebody who did some very bad things with Jeffrey Epstein. And she has been missing for quite some time. Probably the last year and a half, she has not been seen at her home in New York's Upper East Side. Now, this is because of the public release of Epstein's files back in 2024. And those documents had previously been sealed and revealed details, obviously, about high-profile figures, which we've talked about on here, whether it's Prince Andrew or David Copperfield, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton. And all of those parties have vehemently denied having knowledge of Epstein's criminal activities or participating in any wrongdoing. Nadia is a model-turned-pilot believed to have been brought to the U.S. from Slovakia by Jeffrey Epstein back in about 2001. She is believed to have visited Epstein in the Florida jail more than 70 times while he was locked up. She's also known as Global Girl, and she reportedly flew on Epstein's private jet. Now, it's not known whether or not she ever piloted the plane. She does have aviation credentials, and I'm going to put those in quotes, aviation. She is reported to be the CEO of Aviloop, LLC, which offers a wide range of services designed to accelerate the growth of brands in the aviation industry. The firm, until recently, was listed as being based at a New York building owned by Epstein's brother, Mark. Now let's take a look at some of Aviloop recruitment videos. This first one is from someone who identifies herself as Claire. Take a look.
Hi, welcome to Classic Flight Training on Aviloop.com. My name is Claire, and I'm your deal attendant. With today's deal, you can channel your inner Top Gun, climb into the cockpit, and learn to fly an airplane. You can even practice saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The flight lasts 1 hour under the supervision of an FAA instructor, begins with a ground school lesson, and ends with a new perspective on what you were born to do. And remember Top Gun? Clearly, your attractiveness increases with every flight under your belt. Just remember to wear your aviators and pick a cool call sign, Captain.
Now, after watching that, I want to remind you that the Slovakian colors are not blue and white. The girls in these videos, and there are 4 videos, 3 girls, are very young. Nadia calls it a feminist company, but Avi is a masculine word. Outside of the abbreviation for aviation, it's Hebrew for highest father, as in God. If you watch the video again, you'll hear things like, for up to 90% off, see more girls like me. Ongoing steep discount hooks suggest money was made on the back end. It sounds as if this was something that Epstein was running prior to him being arrested again in 2019. Notice how she's selling the Top Gun experience. And then take a look at this Jeffrey Epstein photo from The Sun in 1995 from Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday party. Ghislaine Maxwell was photographed entering the party with Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey is wearing, like I said, this Navy SEAL Navy outfit. Ghislaine was wearing a dark, long military-style nautical blazer that she paired with a skirt. And yes, that is Harvey Weinstein standing next to Jeffrey Epstein. And Nadia currently sells aviation apparel with similar designs. Ornate military epaulette shoulder dressing with cords and tassels. Get in the loop. Pitch phrase pairs with Jeffrey Epstein's infinity loop signature and how he was infinite possibilities. Yes, that is a male voice moaning in the background as the brunette deal attendant says you can meet more girls like her. Nadia did not edit it out. And it appears that Nadia has lost the login or never had it for the YouTube account. This appears, Aviloop appears to be an extension of Jeffrey Epstein, at least up until a certain point. It is bizarrely subliminal. It is extremely well thought out. It all continues to add up. Now, I want to take you down a rabbit hole. Not too big of a rabbit hole, but a rabbit hole nonetheless. This second video is from a woman who identifies herself as Ashley. Take a look.
Hi, welcome to Cole's Flight School on avaloop.com. My name is Ashley and I'm your Jill attendant. Anyone who claims that humans were not meant to fly never experienced the thrill of their own successful landing. If you've been bitten by the flying bug and you want to add multi-engine to your pretty green license, this is your opportunity to do it at 50% off. You don't see that very often. Today's deal includes all the necessary ground school and 15 hours of multi-engine flight training. Get ready to fly big boy airplanes. To purchase this deal, you must hold at least a private pilot license and a current medical certificate. Don't miss out and click on that big blue button. You know you want to.
Now, the video is very similar to the video that we watched from Claire. But Ashley, look at her again. Ashley could be, maybe, a woman by the name of Ashley Martinez. Ashley Martinez went missing in 2004 when she was 15 years old. These videos appear to have been made in 2012. So that would have made her 23. When I look at it, and maybe it's, a confirmation bias kind of thing. But when I look at it, it does look very similar to how Ashley looked. They've done kind of how Ashley would look now, and it's different. But is this person in this video, do we think that she's 23 years old? Is it Ashley Martinez? Like I said, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. It could be confirmation bias, but when you take a look at the video of Ashley, and then you take a look at the pictures of what Ashley looked like when she disappeared when she was 15, is not that far off. This is not somebody who disappeared when she was 5. And we're trying to say, oh, well, could be the person when she's 23. This person disappeared when she was 15 years old. Could this be the same person? Like I said, they do look very, very much alike. Nadia, as the story goes, that she was bought by Jeffrey Epstein. Her parents sold her to Jeffrey Epstein. So then, okay, well, we have this missing person, Ashley Martinez. According to Nadia, Avaloop was founded because her career evolved from marketing through high fashion modeling to aviation. And when she was ready for, quote unquote, longer runways, she became an aerobatic pilot, licensed flight instructor, and airline transport pilot, rated on multiple Gulfstream Boeing aircraft. And during her career in aviation, she developed a thorough understanding of the industry and its demands, and that she created Avaloop in 2011. One of the things that they'll do is like I said, they design these pilot epaulets, much the same as this, ornament kind of thing that Jeffrey Epstein was wearing. But one of the other things is that they offer the services, contract services of aviation professionals. And their quote on the website is, "We will use our network to match our clients with qualified pilots to fly their aircraft." Okay, that seems legit. Or other aviation professionals, including conference booth or social media influencers for their marketing needs. Okay, what kind of people are we providing for conference booth or social media influencers? And then they also have team building events. But for the team building events, despite the fact that it's supposed to be, it's all about aircraft and flying and things like that, they use a photo of, she's not half naked, but it's a model. And I'm going to try and post the photo. It's in a kind of system that won't let me do it very easily, but it doesn't really seem like they're selling aviation services, more like they're selling something else. Is that what those videos are all about? We shall see. All right, you guys, I will talk to you later.
Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, but today we're not going to be analyzing body language. Today we're going to be doing a forensic analysis of Jeffrey Epstein's death. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. Now, if you've been watching my coverage of Epstein, you'll see that I have already analyzed quite a lot of footage from this night. However, there's a segment that I have not covered, and when we combine that with the DOJ's report, which we are also going to review a little bit of, I think we have found Jeffrey Epstein's killer. And by the time I'm done talking about all this, I think you might come to the same conclusion. All right, let's just jump right in. So where we're starting is about a minute before we spot who I believe is Jeffrey Epstein's killer. Right now, you can see that one of the officers, her name's Officer Noel, her name's going to come up a few times, so I want to go ahead and tell you her name. She's sitting at the desk where the officers sit. You're going to see her get up in a minute, and it's going to be important that you see where she walks. Because if you're to understand the layout of this place, if you look right here, that's a staircase. You're seeing just a sliver of it. That's a staircase that leads up to what's called Tier L. And Tier L is where Jeffrey Epstein is housed. We're going to look at a picture of Tier L later. But right now you can see Officer Noel is getting up. And as you watch, she walks right off the screen. Clearly, she didn't walk up the stairs. I paused it. Clearly, she did not walk up the stairs. She walked directly off. We're going to watch that one last time so you can see what that looks like. All of this matters. Just bear with me. It's so hard to see. It's important to watch it a couple of times. Okay, so she just walked off. So what we're going to do now is skip ahead about a minute so you can see this orange figure walk up these stairs. Now, as you can see, as I pointed out before, clearly Officer Noel did not walk up the stairs. But what the DOJ alleges is that this is in fact her carrying either linens or clothes up the stairs, and that must be what we're seeing. But we've got a lot of details around that we're going to get into from the report that make this much more complicated. Let's just jump right in and watch it, and then we'll talk more about it. So here we are, nearing 10:40 p.m. I want you to watch on the staircase. You're going to see what looks like a figure dressed in orange walking up the stairs. So clearly this is the color of their jumpsuits. No question about that. Let's watch this again. And as far as I can tell, you see somebody moving around. I don't see any parts that do not look orange. Because what is said in the report, let's actually read the report right now. I'm going to pull this up, although we're going to be going much deeper into the report. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about specifically what it says. Through review and analysis of the shoe video footage, witness statements, and BOP records, the OIG determined that at approximately 10:40 p.m., which is what we're looking at right now, a CO, in other words, a correctional officer, believed to be Noel, carried linen or inmate clothing up to L tier, which was the last time any CO approached the only entrance to the shoe tier in which Epstein was housed. Okay. Now, I dispute that that's what's happening here. One, because it looks like somebody's actually wearing orange. And two, because you're going to see for many reasons why that is inconsistent with what comes next. We're going to watch it one last time, and then we're going to move on, and we got a lot more to look at. Because it looks almost like somebody's arm reaches out, or there's something that comes out right here that is also orange. I'm going to go through a variety of reasons why I do not believe that that's somebody carrying linens. And even the report by the Inspector General of the Department of Justice says they believe it was Officer Noel. They do not confirm that it is Officer Noel. And when we go over the details, you're going to see why that seems even flimsier. Now what we're going to do is we're going to skip ahead to the next time we see somebody come in frame. Now I want you to keep in mind, I'm watching this with a very critical eye. You do not see anybody come back down the stairs. There's at no point during this segment that I'm going to skip to that anybody walks down that stairs. You don't see a hand, a leg, a foot, anything. We skipped about a minute ahead, and now we're going to see the next person come into frame. Now, this is Officer Noel again. Now, did you notice how she came in? Directly right to left. There was no part where she walked down the stairs. You didn't see her coming down the stairs and curve towards this. Once again, we're going to look at footage later of somebody doing that so you can compare it with this. But at no point did we see her walking down those stairs. So at this point, nobody has come back down. One person has come up, and we have not seen anybody come back down again. Now, the question is, when would they come back down? How would they get out if we didn't see them yet? They have to come out at some point. So there's really two possible explanations for if one person came up that we didn't see come back down, what happened? Well, one of them would be, as they're coming back out, maybe it's possible that off in the distance they spotted this camera or realized there was a camera here. Because obviously, if they knew that ahead of time and they were trying to stay hidden, they would not have been visible at all as they walked up those stairs. The other possibility would be that there's a time that's missing from this video, and that's when they left. We're going to skip ahead for a minute. You probably know what's coming next. So here we are at 11:58 p.m. at night. Most of you that have seen anything about this footage know that we are getting ready to come up on a missing minute. So why is this minute missing? Well, if it's missing for a reason, if there's something they didn't want you to see, it's very possible that there's some orange that reappeared during that minute, but we don't know for sure. What we do know is that at no point did we see anybody come back down after they went up at 10:40 p.m. So now what we're going to do is compare officers walking up those stairs to the person in orange that we saw earlier. Okay. As you can see right there, that's what it looks like when an officer walks up the stairs to L tier. Let's watch that again. As you can see, they're very clearly wearing dark clothing. There's no orange. There's nothing that could possibly be mistaken for that. So there you go. That's actually somebody leaning over. They're handing something down. So that gives you an idea of the height right there. That proportionally, I mean, this stuff is so hard to see. I know it's frustrating to try to look at. And I assure you that when we compare this to the DOJ report, you will truly understand why I've come to the conclusion that we have actually seen Jeffrey Epstein's killer on this video. So there you can see, that's what it looks like with somebody coming down the stairs. You can see just a little bit of an outline as they're running down. See, that's what going down the stairs looks like. Now, somebody could avoid being seen if they wanted to. They'd have to be aware of this camera and they'd have to be trying not to be seen. So sure, it wouldn't be that hard, I think, to sneak up and down. But if somebody's not trying to be seen and they walk down, that's what it looks like. That's why I wonder, why didn't we see that from Officer Noel earlier? Let's look at the orange figure one last time before we really get into the report. So as you can see, this person walking up, after watching people leaning over, it almost looks like this person is leaning over. Like that's the head right there, and then that's the body right behind it. It almost looks like they're leaning over and looking at the desk where the officers sit. So now let's move on to the DOJ's report about this, because the DOJ's report is really why I've solidified my belief that this is in fact somebody who is not supposed to be there. Now let's look at the Office of the Inspector General of the Department of Justice's report on the night Jeffrey Epstein died. Now, I have analyzed some of this before, but what we're looking at here specifically is only going to be what's relevant to what we just saw. There's so much more in here. I have some other videos on it that I highly recommend you watch if you're interested in this. I talk about the DVR system, the security cameras, talk about all sorts of strange inconsistencies, but all of this is going to relate back to what we just covered, and it will help you understand why I've come to the conclusion that I think that we have now seen Jeffrey Epstein's killer. So as we analyze this, there's a couple of things that you've got to know to make sense of it. One is that if you see SHU written anywhere, SHU, Special Housing Unit, that's where they are. They are in the Special Housing Unit. Jeffrey Epstein is on Tier L in the Special Housing Unit. So he's on Tier L of SHU. In addition to that, they're supposed to do head counts at 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 a.m., 5 a.m. Okay, and they did not do any of those. We're going to get into the quotes about that. But understand, they're supposed to do that, and then every 30 minutes, they should be checking on the inmates. That's just part of what they have to do. That's their job. But understanding those fundamental facts helps you better understand some of what I'm seeing in all of this. So here's a couple of quotes I'm going to read you, then we'll talk about the relevance. It's going to get a lot more interesting as we go, but I'm going to try to be thorough, so I'm going to cover everything. So at approximately 8 p.m. on August 9th, SHU inmates were locked into their cells for the night, including Epstein, who was without a cellmate. All right, so at 8 p.m., everybody was locked in their cell. So they are saying That could not have just been an inmate walking around, period. 8 o'clock, that was 10:40. A search of Epstein's cell following his death revealed Epstein had excess prison blankets, linens, and clothing in his cell. So keep in mind, there were 3 other people in this tier aside from Epstein. We're going to go into what they said happened that night and what they recall. We talked about that in another video in a different way, but it's relevant to this, so we're going to go back to it. But keep in mind, there's only 4 people up there. So if linens and clothes were taken up there, they were taken up there either for Epstein or one of the other 3 people. And he had an excess of these things in his cell, which he shouldn't have had at all. The OIG also found that SHU staff did not conduct any 30-minute rounds after about 10:40 on August 9th, and that none of the required SHU inmate counts were conducted after 4 p.m. on August 9th. So they did not do any head counts, which is a really important part of a prison. And as far as the 30-minute rounds, from what they're saying is that what we saw at 10:40 was one of their rounds. That is the claim. This is one last part I'm going to show you from the intro of this. This is a 128-page document. We're not going to talk about every single page, but this is incredibly significant that this was in the introduction. Additionally, the OIG did not observe on the recorded video that Noel and Thomas being the other officer that came later, who were seated at the desk at the SHU officer station immediately outside the area where Epstein was housed, at any time during the time period, rose from their seats or approached the cell block. So they're basically saying that between 10:40 p.m. and 6:30 a.m., that at no point did they approach the cell block or rise from their seats, which is insane. They get up and move around non-stop that entire time. So the fact that it claims that at no point they rose from their seats is wild. But it goes to show that during the summary, it's trying to form a specific narrative. And it's saying something that is unequivocally, provably, and factually false in every sense of the word. Now, this I just highlighted because it continues to repeat and says many times throughout that Epstein had an excess of blankets, linen, and clothing in his cell. And if he had that excess, and yet at the same time they felt like they needed to bring somebody extra linens or clothes, how is it that they took an inventory of that? How did they know what anybody needed? Because they weren't checking on them. So why did they take, and who did they take the blankets and the linens to? Who was it that needed new clothes? There's no indication at any point as we go through this that anybody asked for that anybody received it. Let's just keep going. So here's another quote. Additionally, the OIG participated in interviews of 15 inmates who had been housed at MCC New York during the time periods relevant to our investigation, including 3 who were housed in the L tier of the SHU on the day Epstein died. Those 3 L tier inmates were housed in cells opposite Epstein's cell and therefore had a direct line of sight to Epstein's cell on the night of August 9th and 10th. Now, as we're going to see when we look at what the cells looked like, while technically true, it's not quite the nature of the way that sounds, because it looks like if you're going to have a direct look at somebody else, you actually have to go up to what appears to be a little window. So unless you're literally standing at your door, you don't have a direct line of sight to other people. It doesn't look like you could be sitting in your bunk and be looking at somebody else at the same time. You'll see for yourself when I get down to that. I'm trying to go in order. I could probably organize this a little differently, but this just makes the most sense to me. Another quote that stands out because we're going to have more conflicting information. MCC New York SHU staff members do not conduct the 4 p.m. or 10 p.m. inmate counts. After approximately 10:40 p.m., SHU staff members do not conduct the required 30-minute rounds. Just keep in mind, they're saying that the 4 o'clock and 10 p.m. inmate counts did not happen. If you just want to understand how this is all organized right here is where the officers sit. L tier is right there. You can see this teeny little staircase right here that leads up. So look here at the stair. Now I want you to look at the way that this is set up right here. So there's one staircase leading down to M tier, and there's a staircase leading up to L tier. It's not all that wide. If you really hugged the right side of it, you could avoid being spotted on that camera. That would not be that hard to do. And then you can see where it leads up right here. Now, as I pointed out earlier, it looked like somebody either put their head out or put an arm out, maybe even leaned over, which would help them see if anybody was seated over here or if there was anybody that they weren't aware of down here. And then that leads right up into L tier. So think about this. It's claimed that Officer Noel walked up there at 10:40, but we never saw her come back down. I looked as best as I could. Unless she was avoiding being seen coming back down, we certainly didn't see her walk down. And we didn't see her walk down with linens. If the linens were spotted going up, they would be even more visible coming down because they would be in front of her. So what happened to the linens and the clothing that allegedly she took upstairs? It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense at all. And if she did give them to somebody, that's not indicated here because nobody indicates that they received any of those things. So here's what I was talking about, how to be able to see into somebody else's cell, you'd have to be standing right up there. The windows are tiny. And here you can see Eltier's entry door. And there is Epstein's cell right there open. And there's the little window I was talking about. So when they say they have a direct line of sight, like I said, in theory, that's true if you were like standing up and looking through that window. But otherwise, you're not going to be able to see much of anything unless somebody passes right in front of your door. Now, this is significant because there's a very important point I'm going to talk about in a minute that I think is extremely important. And I'm not just trying to get you to sit through this video. It's just hard to go through every last thing without going in order. But there's something about tearing the sheets that's going to really stand out. I just want you to get an idea of how close this officer's station is to Epstein's room. It is not that far from his cell at all. All right, now we're getting to a section I call 73+1. This is very confusing. I had actually thought about doing a video on this previously, but it's so confusing, in fact, that I thought, you know what, I'm just going to skip it. But actually, it's too relevant to this, so we're going to go over it. Try to bear with me. I'm going to explain it as best as I can. So what this is relevant to is how many people are housed in each tier. They do a head count. So in other words, they count how many inmates there are. Shouldn't change that much unless somebody leaves. I'm going to read a quote from it. We'll talk about it. We'll keep going. At the time of the 10 p.m. count, all inmates in the MCC New York SHU, including Epstein, were locked in their cells for the night. All right, makes sense. Nobody's up and around after 10 p.m. At or around that time, the two officers assigned to the SHU were responsible for conducting the 10 p.m. stand-up count. At 10 p.m. on August 9th, the two assigned SHU officers were Noel and the material handler. Through a review and analysis of the SHU security camera video, witness statements, and BOP records, the OIG determined that MCC New York staff did not perform the 10 p.m. count in the SHU, so it was not done at 10 p.m. Nonetheless, Noel and the material handler completed and signed the 10 p.m. SHU count slip. The 10 p.m. SHU count slip listed the total number of inmates as 73 plus 1. So all of that is to say that they didn't actually do the head count, but they counted 73 inmates, and there was a +1 written on there. So that was wherever they sourced that information, that's what they wrote down. It'll all start to make more sense in a minute. The material handler verified that he and Noel signed the 10 p.m. count slip and believed that Noel called the control center with their count numbers. He did not know why the count slip listed 73 plus 1. The +1 was unusual. Noel told the OIG that she had conducted the SHU count alone at 10 p.m. and that the material handler signed the count slip even though he did not conduct the count with her. However, the OIG's review and analysis of the SHU security camera video conflicts with Noel's statement that she conducted the 10 p.m. count. So, and we know that she falsified this, but she claimed, even in spite of all this, that she actually did the 10 p.m. count, which we know for a fact she didn't do. Noel said she wrote the 73 on the count slip, but she did not remember if she or someone else had written +1 on the count slip, and she did not know why +1 was on the count slip. So that seems like a pretty strange thing to forget, whether or not you had written +1 on the count slip. Now, I understand why she's saying she didn't know why +1 was written on there, but to say she didn't remember whether or not she had written it on there, there needs to be a much better explanation than just she just doesn't remember. We're going to get into why 73 matters so much and the +1 matters so much in a minute, but I just want you to keep in mind those are the numbers that they're sticking with. Noel said she did not know that the 10 p.m. SHU count slip, which listed 73 inmates, was inaccurate, and she could not explain why the 12 a.m. count also inaccurately listed that 73 inmates were physically present in the SHU, whereas the 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. count slips accurately listed 72 inmates in the SHU. So there were actually 72 people there, but for some reason, at both 10 o'clock and at 12 o'clock, she said there were 73. And the next count, which they falsified, but at the next count, they were actually accurate and said 72. So why is it that both 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, They had an extra inmate listed on the official document.
That's probably the killer. That's probably the killer. And the reason she correctly put that person in there is because that unit will stay on lockdown till you clear that count. And she had to tell the truth, or that would have threw the whole damn plan off, because then they would have knew exactly what area of the prison that's off. It would have been there. So she had to tell the truth and say, no, we have 73 people here when it's really only supposed to be 72. But the inmate killer, I think that's where he's going with this, she counted that person correctly.
Documents that they wrote. When questioned by the OIG about the 10 p.m. shoe count slip that listed 73 plus 1 inmates and was signed by the material handler and Noel, Senior Officer Specialer 6 told the OIG that he believed the +1 on the count slip was in his handwriting. So in other words, for whatever reason, this person, the senior officer, said that he probably added the +1. So Senior Officer Specialist 6 said that because there were in actuality only 72 inmates in the shoe during the 10 p.m. count, he should have written 73 minus 1 on the shoe count slip rather than 73 plus 1. So now this is part of why it gets so confusing. So there were actually 72 inmates. So basically what was done is called ghost counting, or at least according to the Senior Officer Specialist, where you add a plus or minus 1 onto the official forms. It says ghost counting is not permitted. You can't do that. So why he's claiming that that's what he did continues to be puzzling. So not only was the 73 inaccurate, should have been 72 unless there was another inmate there at 1040. Not only was that inaccurate, he also wrote +1, which is a very strange mistake to make if you meant to write -1. The whole thing is incredibly strange. And nowhere in this does it give an adequate explanation. It just says this is what happened and it moves on because they're just, I guess, saying mistakes happen. And that's part of the troubling part of this, is that things like that are never adequately explained. Now, here's where it starts to get even more confusing. Noel told the OIG that she and Correctional Officer 3 conducted the 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. counts in MCC New York's 10 South unit, which is the single-celled structure unit adjacent to the shoe. I do wonder if that's what room 46, if you see that door, if that's what leads to this area, the 10 South unit. So why is it that she's going to another unit to do counts and didn't do a single count in her own unit? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So she leaves the unit to go do counts elsewhere and doesn't count what she's supposed to. She doesn't even do her primary job, but is going somewhere else to do it. How does this make any sense whatsoever? So she wasn't willing to walk just a few feet to count to a head count in her own units that were literally feet away from her. And yet she walked up a flight of stairs, went through a door, went to a whole nother area to do counts elsewhere. It just doesn't add up. That just doesn't make
it. Do it because she gonna manipulate the count. See, that +1, that killer that's in her area, she's gonna go to the area where that killer is from, and she's gonna make sure that they don't mess up the count, because if they don't count him where he's supposed to be, they're gonna lock the unit down. But wow. So that's crazy that she did that. So she went to that killer's area, made the count right, because she gonna make the count right because he's in the other area. So she's not gonna, because she going there, it's supposed to be 54 people and it's only 53. It's a problem. Where's this person? She gonna throw the count off because the person is over there in her unit.
Make any sense logically. And it also says that according to Noel, no one other than the morning watch operations lieutenant and CO3, or Correctional Officer 3, as detailed later below, entered the shoe during her shift, which is, once again, verifiably and demonstrably false. There are many people that come and go from the shoe. And that's not just me thinking that you can see people. They come in and out through this door. There are plenty of people who walk through the shoe, not just these two. So that, once again, is unequivocally not true. So here's a quote from Officer Noel that really stands out to me, and I think you're going to see why pretty quickly. When asked which rounds she conducted on August 9th, 2019, Noel responded, "That's hard for me to tell because I didn't conduct it every 30 minutes. It was to give out food, pick up the trays, give out toilet paper, go down. Those were the rounds I conducted." You'll notice she didn't say anything about taking linens or bringing clothes to any of the inmates that night. All she talked about was giving out food, picking up trays, giving out toilet paper. She said nothing about bringing fresh linens or bringing fresh clothes. Now, if that was the only round she actually did that night, why isn't that one of the things that was listed off? Why was it every other thing? So right here, there's no evidence whatsoever that she, in fact, actually even claimed to have taken those things up to her. They come to that conclusion, but I haven't seen any quote where she says, yes, I, in fact, carried linens up there. She certainly didn't say it right here. Noelle told the OIG that she went through each tier in the shoe at approximately 10 p.m., which, according to the OIG, is not true. They have said in plain language that did not happen at 10 p.m. And at the time, she went to Epstein's cell and saw him laying on a mattress on the floor, which she said was typical for him. Epstein asked Noelle for his medical device, so she plugged it in for him. Noelle saw that Epstein was in the cell by himself and without a cellmate, but she maintained that she did not know that Epstein was required to have a cellmate. Noelle told the OIG that she went through each tier in the shoe at approximately 10 p.m., and at the time she went to Epstein's cell and saw him laying on a mattress on the floor, which she said was typical for him. Now, according to the OIG, she didn't actually check on him at 10 p.m. Epstein asked Noelle for his medical device, so she plugged it in for him. Noelle saw that Epstein was in a cell by himself and without a cellmate, but she maintained that she did not know that Epstein was required to have a cellmate. So this whole part right here is confusing because the OIG himself has claimed there was no 10 p.m. check-in. So it's anybody's guess as to what this is talking about. Through a review and analysis of the shoe footage, witness statements, and BOP records, the OIG determined that at approximately 10:40 p.m., a CO believed to be Noelle carried linen or inmate clothing up to L tier, which was the last time any CO approached the only entrance to the shoe tier in which Epstein was housed. So they're not even sure that it was Officer Noelle that went up there. Even though they're saying that it was somebody taking up clothes, they don't even know who it was. At no point did she say that she took clothes up there. At no point did anybody later on, which we'll get to, say that they received clothes or linens at that time. So this is quite a conclusion for something that has zero evidence other than just that's the conclusion that they came to. This is not backed up by anything that we've seen. So now I'm going to read a little bit of when they found Epstein's body. Now, there's one part about this that really stands out to me. I'm going to explain why in just a second. Noelle heard Thomas call out for her to retrieve the cutter, and then she heard Thomas rip something. Now, she was outside of the cell, so she could hear Thomas ripping the piece of cloth that was around Epstein. But I want you to think about this. Think about how much force it takes to tear and rip something. It makes sense that she would hear that rip. So she said, hey, he ripped it. I don't even need to get a cutter because it was so obvious that something tore and something ripped. I want you to go back to how close that desk is to Epstein's cell. So if we're to understand right, her standing outside of the cell, she could hear this tiny little piece of cloth get torn as it was being pulled off of him. And yet Epstein shredding full-on sheets and clothes in order to make something, none of that was heard. Do you know how much force it takes to shred something like that? It's not easy, and it is definitely audible. So there's no way you could quietly shred something. You couldn't do it peacefully and quietly. He didn't have any way to cut it. So he would have had to have torn it, and nobody could hear that. And yet right here, she's talking about the fact that it makes a sound when ripped. So here's something that I cannot explain. How is it that Epstein shredded and ripped this stuff? Nobody heard it. The inmates didn't talk about it. The COs didn't hear it. So how on earth did he shred these things and do it and be completely inaudible while doing it? Now, if somebody was going in there to do this to him, they probably would have gone in with things pre-shredded. They're not going to go in there and then shred up the sheets and clothing that are in there. So there's aspects of this that truly make no sense. And just to clarify for anybody wondering whether or not he had just done something sophisticated with a piece of cloth and didn't tear it, the photographs of Epstein's cell on August 10th, 2019 show an excess of blankets, linens, and clothing. Some of the linens had been ripped into thin strips, which were tied to the desk and bunk bed inside the cell. So they were ripped into thin strips. That would be audible. I don't know how he did it without that being heard. Just to briefly go into what the inmates saw. So inmate 5, who was also in the same tier, directly across from Epstein's cell. I talked about this before because of the timing of it, that he said that the last count was conducted a little bit before midnight. He doesn't say anything about anybody bringing him any sheets or anybody offering him any clothes, anything like that. Then we go into inmate 6, believe that the last check was between 12:30 and 1, something like that. Once again, no report that they got anything like clothes, sheets, linens, or anything like that. Inmate 7, who doesn't have as good a view as the other ones do, also didn't say anything about being brought anything at 10:40 at night. All right, let's go ahead and stop here. Hopefully this forensic analysis is helping you better understand some of this report as well as the footage that we watched. To me, it was incredibly compelling to see somebody from, by all accounts, was wearing an orange jumpsuit walk up those stairs towards Jeffrey Epstein's cell, and that nobody was observed coming back down. Unfortunately, this document did nothing to make me think that it can explain what we observed. There is so much inconsistency, and that's what's so crazy about this. This is, I think, my third video analyzing this report, and if you put it all together, there's still so much I haven't covered. It is remarkable how many inconsistencies and holes there are in this, and how many logical fallacies there are. But there's nothing in this report that adequately explains what we saw, other than they think, well, maybe Officer Noel was the one that we saw, but we don't know, and she didn't claim it was. Maybe somehow 73 inmates were reported, but there were only 72, and it's just a coincidence that that was at 10 and at midnight, but not at 3 and 5 a.m. There's so many aspects of this that make no sense. So do I believe that we, in fact, have Jeffrey Epstein's killer on film? Yes, I do. So if you have any other thoughts about this, let me know in the comments.
Cool. Follow me.